I'll call the meeting to order. Welcome everyone to the Committee of the Whole meeting of Tuesday, October 10th, 2024. Just a reminder that this is Committee of the Whole meeting and no decision will be made here today. There will only be recommendations that will go to our next regular council meeting on Tuesday, October 22nd, 2024 for consideration. A couple of reminders for today's meeting. Members of the media may sit in the upper balcony at the reserved media table. All other guests, please take a seat in the first floor gallery. If this is full, there is overflow seating on the second floor in the Victoria Room where you will be able to see and hear the meeting. We live stream the meeting on your YouTube channel and the recording is available after the meeting. This meeting is also broadcast live on your TV, Cogeco subscribers channel 10, HD channel 700, and rebroadcasted on Wednesday at 9 a.m. and on Saturday at noon. Because meetings are accessible to the public in all of these ways, video or audio recordings by members of the public is not permitted in council chambers. This is to ensure that all attendees and those who come to make a deputation feel at ease. Thank you for your cooperation. We have Councillors Warren and Yeo zooming in today. And I have one announcement. October is National Disability Employment Awareness Month, and on October 17th, we will be lighting City Hall in blue for the 5th annual Light It Up campaign. This is a time for staff, businesses, and residents to recognize the importance of having equal employment opportunities for all workers, including those with disabilities. It's a time to reflect on our policies to ensure that they foster inclusivity and remove barriers, and a time to acknowledge the contributions of staff with disabilities whose perspectives are valued and celebrated. A truly inclusive workplace has no limitation on what can be achieved. Councillor Joyce, you have the adoption of the agenda?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I do. Excuse me. Moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Richardson that the agenda for the Committee of the Whole, Tuesday, October 8th, 2024, be adopted as circulated with the following amendments. There's 3 additions. Item 4.3 being a deputation by Keith Aubrey regarding water infrastructure on Bruce Street and Doble Drive in Oakwood. Item 4.4 being a deputation by Glenda Morris regarding sidewalk safety within Lindsay. And item 4.5 being a deputation by Eric Belchamber regarding a telecommunications facility concurrence application for 498 Golf Course Road, Geographic Township of Manvers.
Thank you. All in favor? And that passes. Are there any disclosures of pecuniary interest on anything on today's agenda? Seeing none, should any arise during the course of the meeting, advise the chair and we'll deal with it accordingly. We'll move right into deputations, and our first deputation is Mr. John Bianco, dealing with maintenance issues within the village of Omimi. Mr. Bianco, you have 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As you know, my name is John Bianco from Omimi. I just moved here 7 years ago, and I've been really concerned about issues. As the mayor knows and Councillor Ashmore know, we have talked about certain items. And first of all, apologize up front here that might offend some of you and it might not. It all depends on how you take it. I'd like to thank the mayor for one thing, is he's letting me come here because him and I took a drive through Omimi a few weeks ago. And it's funny how the sidewalks are now being repaired just a week before that I'm going to talk about it. So thanks for doing that. The Mary Street Bridge. Basically, what I'm just pointing out things here and make people aware of Omimi, because I am a concerned citizen. And as Ron knows, Councillor Ashmore knows that we have talked several times about stuff. And for example, the Mary Street Bridge, which was the contractor's fault that the detour signs weren't put up, and they still haven't repaired that bridge. Why? It's been, what, 2.5 years, 3 almost, that this bridge is not repaired. And then, apparently this is already on the agenda, but 2 expansion joints on the bridge coming into town. Loose asphalt. They were both in the same condition. Why repair one and not the other? Like, it seems again that jobs aren't finished. And that's a concern of mine, because if that asphalt ever comes up and hits a windshield or whatever, it's going to be the district or the MTO or whoever looks after the roads. They're going to be up the paddle without, you know what. And then it really blows me away. They go through and put all these nice new poles in and all these nice lights throughout town. It's great. They've done an awesome job and everything. Why would you put a brand new light fixture for not buying one more pole on a wooden pole that's slanted at a 45-degree angle? They got a nice new light fixture there by the bridge. If you haven't seen it, you can't miss it. So that's what it's a bone of my contention why you would do that. You look down the street all nice and straight, and then you got a light on a pole that's at a 45-degree angle. Doesn't make any sense at all. They've put all new asphalt at the entrance of the park behind the Legion. I went by there last night and actually drove over it with my own truck. And there's a 6-inch drop. Why wouldn't they put stone in there to level it out? Finish the job. This is the problem that we're having. You know, maybe jobs aren't being finished. And that's a bone of my contention. Being in construction, I can't leave a job unless it's completely done. The beach area, I drove through and walked through the beach last night, making sure that I knew what I was going to be talking about. I just think that there's X amount of dollars already allotted for the beach. Apparently there's a meeting tomorrow night concerning the beach area, which I just found out a few minutes ago. The money that's there, spend it, clean it up, bring the beach back to its glory days. All the neighbors that I talked to that have been there for years have said how good it was. The kids played down there. Heck, get a life standard up there, so get a lifeguard in there at certain times of the day, whatever. Bring the beach back. You don't have to have all the bells and whistles that, you know, that you need. Like, it's terrible. Both entrance ways going into the beach area are going through moguls. It's so badly broken up. Another one, and Ron and I have Councilor Ashmore and I have talked about, is the hydro poles. Just recently, we had one come down that was only being held by the wires. So my wife and I, being that we're hydro people, our son works for the hydro, bingo, right away, we're on the phone because we walked that. And that pole happened to be in front of our neighbor Nick's place, who has 5 kids in that house. If that pole ever let go, there'd be a lot of damage. So anyhow, we got that organized through our son. Hydro came, that was done that night. Perfect, not a problem. The bump, right there at James Street at the intersection, James and King. They did, they did all the asphalt and everything else. Why leave a bump right in the middle of the road? That's going to be, snowplows hit that, there's going to be more damage, for sure. The hydro poles, if you look down all the hydro poles, one goes this way, one goes to the left, one goes to the right.
Can I get you to wrap up, please?
Oh, really? It's my 5 minutes? Well, I'm only on page 3. Oh, come on, Mr. Mayor. Anyways, if that's the case, then basically what I'm going to say to finish off is the District of Kawartha Lakes isn't just Lindsay, Bobcaygeon, and Finland Falls. Omimi's part of this too, and I would like to see more happening in the town of Omimi so that the people can rest assured that we are part of this district. Thank you.
Just stay there for a minute in case council has questions for you, please.
Well, yeah, I didn't even get to finish half of what I wanted to talk about, so.
Any questions for the deputant?
You know.
Go ahead, Councillor Ashmore.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through to John, thanks for coming. And yes, we've met before. We've met a few times, and I've been to your house a few times, and so has Mayor Elmsley. And I'm aware of all these issues. Now, I just wanted to thank you for coming, but there's a lot of positive things that we need to talk about too. As far as the bridge goes, that's been repaired, 100%. There was an insurance claim, and that's been completely 100% repaired. The Mill Pond Bridge. So if you're down that way,
Certainly didn't look like it last night.
no, it is 100%. 100% repaired, and it was all done 3 weeks ago. Now the sidewalks, we can't control when the contractors do their work, but they're doing a lot of work. I was in Omimi yesterday. Just wanted to just go over a few things. As far as the beach park, we're going to have a meeting tomorrow night at the Omimi Community Center, and we're looking at potentially in a future budget investing over 6-7 figures in a redesign of this park. And one of the things is to clear the beach out, and we are going to restore it to its old glory, as you say, and that's a good way of putting it, because we want to restore it to what it was before. The bridges, we do share a lot of infrastructure with Ontario, so we have to deal with MTO. As far as the bridge goes, we've just approved $650,000 for expansion joints for the other side, so that's been taken care of. And the plant, the ice plant just north of Omimi, that's been approved for the last meeting, $3 million. So I tallied it all up, and including the addition of the school, we've spent more per capita on the village of Omimi, I think, than anywhere. And I'm grateful for that. We've worked, Councillor Richardson has been working hard too, and I've been working hard. Everybody in this council has approved but definitely we've invested the highest amount per capita of anybody really in the city, Kawartha Lakes, in Omimi. So we've delivered the goods, and I tallied it up, and it's been over $13 million we've spent in the village in the last 2 years. So $13 million, and that doesn't include what we're looking at potentially for work on the redevelopment of the beach park. But these things we can repair, and we are repairing them. The hydro, we have to deal with hydro, and the MTO, so that's another thing that we have to deal with as well, because we have a connecting link. So, but we've invested really heavily into infrastructure, and we're really making great strides. I mean, the village has turned itself around amazingly in the last 4 years, 3-4 years. So I know there's some negative things maybe that you may not see, happening as quickly as you'd like to, but I think we've made great strides, and we're doing a great job. So, but I'm certainly here to, we're not perfect, but we do get these things repaired as quickly as we can. So, but again, thanks for coming.
Can I comment back? Have I got time?
No.
Okay.
Councillor Richardson.
Thank you, and through you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you very much for coming today and fleshing out a few examples, and I will echo Councillor Ashmore's sentiments as well, that we are investing in all our communities, and Omimi has seen a huge surge of investment in the last few years. I'm wondering, we have a case system put in place through the city. Have you put these things that you see into case? We actually have a case system that puts it on it goes to the exact department where concerns need to be addressed, and that goes into a rotation, goes to the proper yards, and it seems to be working very well with a few of my other residents. So I want to make sure that you're aware of it and you are using it.
That's fine. I've tried to go through the Scott office concerning about having a gas line put on our street. We're the only street in Omimi that doesn't have gas, and I've gone after her now I've been there 7 years. Traffic lights at the corner of Dean and King Street, and gas coming down, and I'm still waiting 8 months now for a call back from the Scott office. So I've basically given up on that.
Okay, that's great. That's a completely different department. But
Yeah,
maybe
but
what
no,
we'll
it's not.
do is we'll forward
It's not completely different
We'll
department.
forward you a link so then you can see what we're talking about too, because we need our residents to work with us too when it comes to solving problems. That's all I'm saying, so I appreciate that.
Okay.
Thank you for coming today.
Okay.
Can I have a motion to receive the deputation? Councillor Richardson, Councillor Ashmore, all in favor? And that passes. Our next deputation is Mr. Roger Cook, talking about telecommunications facility, 498 Golf Course Road. Welcome, Mr. Cook, and you have 5 minutes.
Thank you. I live at 531 Chipmunk Road, and my neighbor's property is the area where they're going to build this tower, and I just want to object to having a tower that close to my house, basically, because it's, I feel it's the ugliest thing you could build, and I don't want to sit on my back deck and look at it, you know, and well, this is harder than I thought it was going to be. I wouldn't like to.
Just have a conversation with me and everybody else will hear.
Okay. Yeah. So the other thing that bothers me is that these kind of things can be built without like rezoning a piece of agricultural property. It's a commercial thing. I don't understand how the process is just able to be put aside and build whatever. And I guess my last thing is it's a little close to my house, I feel, and I'm a little worried what comes off it. Like, I know it's probably not gonna hurt me, but I'm afraid I'm gonna be thinking about that all the time. So that's all I have to say.
Thank you. If you just stay there in case there are some questions for you.
Okay.
I will point out that the approvals for these towers are in the hands of the federal government. And I will also point out that you live in an area that has very poor reception, and this is going to improve it immeasurably in any event. Councillor Richardson?
Thank you, and through you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Cook, for coming today, because we have had numerous conversations, and I do recognize your concerns. And we have, you know, said about the connectivity, and there is a connectivity gap in your area. I'm just wondering, do you have any solutions, or it's just not in your backyard? And I'm not.
Oh, for me,
rude.
yeah, just further away from my house would be nice. You know, I don't have a problem with infrastructure, or, you know, building these things. I know we got to have them. I just don't want, you know, if it was a mile away, I wouldn't be here, you know, kind of thing. That's all.
Well, thank you. We do appreciate you sharing your concerns.
Thanks.
I have a motion to receive the deputation. Councillor
I
Perry?
have a question.
Oh, sorry, go ahead. Councillor Warren?
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor, and thanks for coming. I was just wondering, how close are you to the tower that's proposed?
I think it was 720, I'm not sure, 720 meters to my house.
Okay,
And then,
thank you.
okay.
So I have motion to receive by Councillor Perry. Seconder was Deputy Mayor McDonald. All in favor? And that passes. Our next deputation is water infrastructure on Bruce Street and Doble Street in Oakwood. Mr. Keith Aubry. Mr. Aubry, you have 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I appreciate the time. My name is Keith Aubry. I live on Bruce Street in Oakwood. Been a resident there for 35 years. We purchased our house, the subdivision that we were in is the south end of Oakwood. They called it Oakwood Estates. It's not much stately about it, but that's what they called it when we moved in. Back then, all those homes, there's 51 there now. The water was a central well system that did every house in the subdivision. So it was at the one end of the subdivision and it fed the entire subdivision. I don't know the exact date, but several years later, we got a lovely letter from the city saying that we're going to bring water out from Lindsay to the town of Oakwood. We had a meeting in the arena. There were some folk who had wells that weren't very happy about getting Lindsay water. However, after much discussion, the city decided to bring it out. And they brought it out. They have a processing place just set down by the arena. I think probably most folks are aware of that. And they ran water, we'll call them mains for lack of a better word, water mains into all of the town except our subdivision. So they ran the main in from Lindsay into the existing infrastructure in our little subdivision. So it was great for a while, and I can't count the number of times that we've had water leaks in our subdivision. I'm sure somebody here must know that, but they've been repairing leaks in that subdivision for years. So last week, I get a knock on the door, and there's an individual who's obviously there to repair a water leak, saying that the water's going to be turned off. It was already turned off. And he said there was 3 leaks in the subdivision that had to be repaired. So we were without water all day. It came on in the evening. The next morning, we get a knock on the door. There's a young lady there saying, we're going to turn the water off. We've got another leak in the subdivision. We don't know where it is though. So they locate the leak, and that has been fixed. We were without water most of the day then too. It's pretty apparent to me that the piping in our subdivision is not as good as the piping that was run out from the town, because nobody else has any leaks that I can see being repaired. I think it's time for the city to budget accordingly and replace those pipes before something catastrophic happens. I mean, it just happens every day. I went out in the summertime a couple of years ago to cut the grass, very hot. I looked in the ditch. We don't have sidewalks in Oakwood, we have ditches. 2 feet of water in one side of the ditch. Obviously there was a leak. Dug up half the road. They didn't think they could find the leak, but they did, and they fixed it. Half the roadway in our subdivision is repaved because they keep digging it up. The road will be for another day, maybe we can talk about that. That's really the thing. I know you can't probably do much about it this year, but I think it's really important for you to perhaps look at budgeting next year to make the necessary repairs in that subdivision. It's 51 families living in there. There's a few houses that are for sale. I'm pretty sure if I drove by and saw a couple of backhoes in there digging up the water main, I'd be thinking twice about buying a house in that subdivision. Fella at the north end, he just got his driveway repaired and they dug a great big hole in it. Now he's going to have to repave that. I don't think he's going to be very happy either. So basically that's it. I'm not here to complain. I'm just here to draw to attention that there's an issue there. And I think it's time. It's 30 years. It's probably time to get that fixed properly. So subject to any questions, that's my deposition for today.
Thank you. If you'd stay there. I think Councillor Joyce, do you want to give me a motion to receive and then ask her a question? Seconder for that? Councillor Richardson. Okay, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Aubrey, for shining a light on this. Until we spoke, I was unaware as well. So my question's actually to Director Rojas. And
well, can we, what I'd suggest is you extract it at council and ask that question, and that we deal with the deputant while he's here.
Then I'll just thank you very much for shining a light on this, and we'll dig into this more and get some answers.
I appreciate your support, and like perhaps some sort of communication to the folks in the subdivision rather than a knock on the door saying the water's going to be turned off. Now, I don't know if the whole village gets turned off when ours does. I don't know whether we're in a separate kind of line or not, but it would be nice to know that somebody's looking into it. I'm sure they would be grateful for that.
Yeah, I think sometimes we're in an emergency situation where they have to turn it off and there's not time to give written notification.
I understand that completely.
Okay.
Yeah.
So thank you for coming today.
You're very welcome. Thank you very much.
We have a mover and seconder. All in favor? And that's passed. Our next deputant is Ms. Glenda Morris, talking about sidewalk safety in Lindsay.
Good afternoon. My name is Glenda Morris. I live at 8 Fair Avenue in Lindsay, and thank you for this opportunity to address a public safety concern in our community. Actually, my deputation begins with a good news story. The Lindsay community has experienced a really nice trend since the pandemic, and that is a dramatic increase in bicycle ridership. We're now seeing students going to school. We're seeing people coming back from shopping with their shopping bags, older people even going to work on their bicycles, and families enjoying rides together. So this shift towards active transportation benefits our community's health and environment. However, it has inadvertently created a safety concern on our sidewalks. So I am here today to request that Council enact a bylaw clarifying permitted uses for sidewalks in Lindsay, supported by an educational campaign about rules and responsibilities. This initiative would enhance safety for all sidewalk users and continue to encourage cycling in our community. So I'll cover the current situation, impact on community, proposed solution, implementation and benefits, enforcement concerns and impact on cycling, the timeliness, the ask, and a conclusion. So the current situation, we have witnessed multiple collisions and near misses between pedestrians and cyclists on sidewalks. The existing regulations are imprecise, creating confusion. The situation affects our most vulnerable residents, those being seniors, children, and those with mobility challenges. The impact on the community, well, unsafe sidewalks discourage walking, particularly for seniors and families. As Lindsay grows, the issue will only become more pressing, and our reputation as a livable, safe community is at stake. The proposed solution, a locally developed bylaw addressing Lindsay's specific needs, created with input from key stakeholders such as police, the city's accessibility officer, health unit, cycling clubs, schools, seniors advocates, the BIA, Chamber of Commerce, and any others. For implementation, the focus will be on education over punishment. It will be a positive promotional campaign highlighting safety benefits, and there will be clear guidelines for various types of transportation. The benefits, number 1, enhanced safety for all sidewalk users. Number 2, clear expectations for cyclists and pedestrians. 3, a proactive approach to managing emerging micro-transportation options. So we're just starting to see kick scooters, e-scooters, e-bikes, cargo bikes, e-cargo bikes. These are all very exciting options, and if we start to get some rules in place now, we'll be ahead of the game. Number 4, this demonstrates Council's commitment to public safety. And number 5, it demonstrates Council's commitment to active transportation. So to address concerns perhaps about enforcement, well, the primary focus will be on education, not on penalties. And I see this as being similar to successful measures for compliance with seat belts, with wearing helmets when you're on a bicycle, speed limit campaigns. These are all things where you might not get 100% compliance, but every single step toward compliance improves safety. The impact on cycling, well, the goal is to promote safe cycling, not restrict it. And this will recommend alternative solutions for areas where road cycling might be unsafe. Why act now? Number 1, Lindsay's growing population demands proactive safety measures. Secondly, it's an opportunity to establish guidelines before the adoption of new transportation technologies. And thirdly, it demonstrates our commitment to being a forward-thinking, safety-conscious community that promotes active transportation. Council has just recently endorsed the Active Transportation Master Plan, and you're in the process of having a comprehensive transportation plan. So it's really very timely for that as well. So the ask, I respectfully request that Council 1, direct staff to develop a bylaw clarifying sidewalk usage. 2, ensure stakeholder consultation with the development process. 3, allocate resources for an educational campaign. And in conclusion, by acting now, Council can ensure that Lindsay remains a safe, accessible community for all residents, while supporting our growing cycling culture. This balanced approach will enhance our reputation as a livable city that prioritizes safety and well-being of all its citizens and will be consistent with the strategic priorities of a healthy environment and an exceptional quality of life. And now I'm happy to answer questions.
Thank you. Can I have a motion to receive the deputation? Councillor Perry, Councillor Warren. Questions? Councillor Warren.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Glenda, for coming. Just a couple questions about a bylaw. Do you know what's in the Highway Traffic Act regarding bikes on sidewalks?
Thank you. Through you. Because this is part of the picture. The Highway Traffic Act is really vague. So what the province has provided, however, is there's a handbook that is available online. It's called Cycling Skills, Ontario's Guide to Safe Cycling. And it points out, quote, the Ontario Highway Traffic Act defines a bicycle as a vehicle that belongs on the road. It says further, bicycles are very quiet vehicles, so it is important to warn other cyclists, pedestrians, and motorists of your approach and intentions. Use your bell, horn, hand signals, or voice to communicate that you are passing, approaching, or are close by. And there's a really good starting point if we were to develop a bylaw that would be practical. But the answer about the Highway Traffic Act itself is that, actually, at first I thought that was really frustrating because I was hoping for some nice, clear, definitive law there. But really, this is better because it means we can develop a bylaw that is Lindsay-based and addresses our very specific conditions and situations, both habits and infrastructure.
Councillor Warren.
Yeah, just further to that, through you, Mr. Mayor, to Glenda, you know, if we do a bylaw, it will be for the whole city. It's not, it wouldn't be just for Lindsay.
Okay. So, yeah. I don't know, maybe, would there be a workaround with maybe piloting it? Because I can imagine that conditions in Lindsay aren't the same as Omimi, for example. So it would be something I would ask for some kind of a workaround.
Councillor Perry.
Thank you.
Thanks very much, Mayor. And I'd just like to take a second to commend Ms. Morris on her deputation, perhaps as a model style of deputation. Clear, concise, positive, came with solutions and ideas. And I just look forward to helping where I can moving this forward.
Thank you.
So thank you for coming today, and thank you for the focused nature and the research you've done and providing positive solutions in these days when a lot of troubles out there. So thanks very much for your coming today and how you came to address us.
Yeah, to be clear, I am so happy to see the number of bikes parked at Central Senior and the number of people who are riding bikes. To see them right on the sidewalk, right in front of businesses on Kent Street.
It's a good problem to have.
Yes. Thank you.
Councillor Richardson. Ms. Morris, I think there's...
I'm not done yet. Thank you very much. Thank you again for coming and flagging this. I think it is an important concern. I'm just wondering, sometimes when we do pass bylaws, sometimes they're hard to enforce.
Absolutely.
And that is one of my concerns. And you did mention something about the accidents being flushed out or close to accident. Would, like, our police services have statistics on that?
Statistics on?
Accidents or close by accidents?
No.
Have you got research on that?
No, and what I guess this is based on personal experience, what I have experienced myself, what I have seen, and what people have told me about. And actually my husband said to me, they're gonna think you're exaggerating. And when I got up from the computer, from typing this up, I walked down to meet some people on Kent Street, and what do I see? Right in front of Burns Bulk Food Store is somebody on their bicycle coming toward me. One day, within an hour of doing my errands downtown, I had 4 encounters. 2 of them bicycles sweeping up from behind me, 2 of them bicycles coming toward me, and neither one of us really knew which way we were supposed to go. It's a very unusual trip that I take to Food Basics walking, that I don't have somebody coming up behind me on a bicycle. So, and the most serious collision that I'm aware of is a woman who was walking a dog, and it was student from Central Senior on a bicycle. She went flying, the dog went flying. To his credit, the kid, got up and said, lady, are you okay? Very, very apologetic. And so it occurred to me, maybe a good thing to do is go into the school, see what they can do. And I did. I spoke to a secretary who said she'd pass it on to the principal. An announcement was made. So I think I've done all that I can. But in terms of numbers, I think I would like to see action before somebody gets seriously hurt or worse.
Thank you. And where I was going with that is that bylaws are easy. That's the simple part, is starting a bylaw, but it's enforcing in that education component. I'm wondering if you'd be up for possibly us promoting an education process where we're teaching our local residents about courtesy of other folks when they're using our sidewalks, or going on to our roads in a safe manner. Like, we could maybe looking at all our departments through economic development, our emergency services, communications, and that might be a way to tackle, because we do have a lot of new residents in the area, and it might be an opportunity for us to provide that education and work together instead of enacting a bylaw that may be difficult to enforce.
I'd be happy if that were explored. Now, and there are courses available through Can Bike, and in some jurisdictions, those become part of curriculum in schools. I've done the Can Bike course, and their direction is take the lane. Well, I'm not going to take the lane. So again, this is where I see we need something that is a made locally set of rules and responsibilities, and absolutely a really positive, cheerful campaign, I think would be a big step in the right direction. Thank you.
Deputy Mayor McDonald.
Thank you, through you. Thank you very much for your deputation today. I sit on the BIA, and I understand what you're talking about, but you also got to understand that downtown Lindsay has, parking that is slanted, and it's much, much more dangerous for bicycles to be on the road when you have angle parking than it is on the sidewalk. And that's one thing that we understand what's happening downtown, and we see it, and customers see it come out of there, but the alternative downtown is a lot worse than being on the sidewalk. So.
Yeah, and very recently there was an article in the Globe and Mail about this very issue, and it was a police officer who was quoted as saying, sometimes riding on the road is dangerous, but that is no excuse for introducing a hazard to pedestrians on the sidewalk.
We've had angle parking downtown for many, many years, so it's not something that we just did yesterday. So we have to we have to look at what the angle parking is and what we can do better.
And whether that can be changed.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for coming.
Okay.
We have a motion to receive. All in favor? And that passes. Item 4.5, telecommunications facility, concurrent application, 498 Golf Course Road. Mr. Eric Belchamber. Afternoon, Mr. Belchamber. You have 5 minutes.
Very good. Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor and councillors, for having me as a deputation this afternoon. I wanted to just speak very briefly to the proposed cell tower on Golf Course Road and the merits behind it as part of the Eastern Ontario Regional Network Cell Gap project. This is one of 265 cell towers planned across Eastern Ontario to ensure a stellar service for users. The goal, of course, is to provide, at a minimum, telephone service for 99% of the population of this part of the province. The siting of this tower has been very specific, given the intricate puzzle that a cell network is, and shifting the tower would drastically affect this particular project and its viability within the greater network. I'm sensitive, of course, to Mr. Cook's comments, as I watched his deputation earlier. It is set back more than 700 meters from his residence. There is a large swath of forested area that provides a significant visual buffer between his property and the tower. And when it comes to a safety point of view, we have to abide by Safety Code 6 and the limits put forth by Health Canada. And at the base of the tower and the surrounding area, the amount of RF exposure is a fraction of that allowable threshold. So these are very, very safe. And Mr. Mayor, as you indicated earlier, it will definitely fill a gap in an otherwise very underserved part of the community. I'm available to answer any questions that you've got pertaining to this proposal. And that's all I really wanted to say at this point.
Thank you. Are there any questions? Well, let's get a motion to receive. Councillor Perry, seconder, Deputy Mayor McDonald. I'm sorry, Mr. Cook, you don't get to talk anymore. Questions? Councillor Joyce.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, my question is, I know residents within a certain radius of the tower are notified, but I also understand it's just a dear occupant letter sent out. Have you made any extra efforts to ensure everybody within the affected area has been contacted, and they have been? You've got feedback from them all and had conversations?
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor. The City of Port Lakes protocol requires notification of adjacent property owners within a radius of 120 meters of the subject property lines. And that's well in excess of the minimum requirements put forth by Innovation, Science and Economic Development Canada. In this case, we fulfilled the notification requirements and sent out a 12-page notification package with information about the proposal, about the location, photo renderings. It's quite an extensive package. And we heard from 3 people that expressed opposition on grounds that are widely considered outside of the scope of public consultation.
That's not really my question. So there's 3 people that responded. How many occupants are within that radius that were sent notifications?
If you'll give me a quick moment, I'll let you know exactly how many packages were mailed out. In the case, through Mr. Mayor, in the case of this particular project, there were 10 notification packages sent out to the required property owners within 120 meters of the subject property. Okay.
No, that's my concern, that I want to change things for the future, that these notifications are sent out in a different way. I know you complied to the current rules and regulations, but there's potentially 7 people that just didn't read it, and that's my concern. But that's for future. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We have a mover and seconder. All in favor? Thank you. That passes. Mr. Cook, you can put your concerns in writing and send them to who would it be, the FAA? You can send it through us and then we can channel it through. Okay, you could send it to us and we'll channel it to the right person if you would like to do that. Okay? Thank you. That ends our deputations. We'll move on to presentations. And item 6.1 is the Paramedic Headquarters and Fleet Center Update presentation of Sarah Johnson, James Smith, Ryan Stitt, and Brandon Bortoluzzi. Whenever you're ready. You need to turn on the microphone as well. Welcome, everybody.
Good afternoon, everyone in attendance today, and for those listening online. We want to thank you for joining us as we provide an introduction for the new Paramedic Headquarters and Fleet Center. We do plan on having milestone updates throughout the course of this project. I'd like to introduce to you today the speakers of this presentation. First off, we have Sarah Johnson, Chief of Paramedic Services, who will provide an overview of the challenges and opportunities facing our paramedic services today. She will also discuss why this new facility is essential to ensuring that we continue to meet the growing demands of our community. Following Sarah, you'll hear from me, James Smith, the Manager of Building and Property. I will walk us through the strategic planning behind this project and the rationale for construction decisions. I will outline critical factors that have shaped the development of this project. Next, Ryan Stitt, the principal architect and his colleague Brandon Bortoluzzi, associate architect from Salter Pilon Architecture, will provide an overview of the design and construction plans. They will discuss the construction costs and share with us the costing of similar projects that have taken place in other municipalities. With that, I'd like to turn it over to Sarah Johnson to begin this discussion.
Hi, everybody, and thanks, James. I don't think it comes as any surprise that the need for a paramedic facility is a very long-standing issue. Many of the paramedics, myself included, have been here since the service was downloaded to the municipality in 2002. And when that download happened, paramedics were moved into buildings that were being used for other municipal use. So in Lindsay, for example, the paramedics were moved into 89 St. David Street, which is a public works facility. And what was intended to be a temporary solution until a facility was able to be built or the paramedics were moved into a different location has extended now beyond 20 years. I'm just going to flip to there we go. So our collective experience, both the paramedics and myself, has had several challenges that mainly stem around the fact that those facilities were never meant to accommodate paramedic services or emergency services long term. And as part of the paramedic service master plan that was done a few years ago, a full physical and functional assessment of the facilities was complete. And again, no surprise to any of us that there was some significant deficiencies in those facilities that were identified and again, predominantly circulate around the fact that those facilities were never meant to accommodate emergency services, and those needs are a little bit different than other facilities. So just highlighting some of those key issues, we can look at general infrastructure. There's either no indoor parking for fleet and ambulances or insufficient parking. And that's a challenge for a few different reasons. There's a host of equipment, medical supplies in those ambulances that are temperature sensitive. Medications, IV fluids, for example, they're subject to freezing, they're subject to extreme heat. And as such, it's really critical that they're in a temperature regulated environment. As well, there's significant drains and draws on our batteries with electrical, radio operating systems, lighting, etc. And those vehicles require to be plugged into a shoreline at all times. So when you're not having that indoor space for fleet, it's incredibly challenging. Just something as simple as snow building up on top of a vehicle is really, really challenging when you need to put those into use quickly. In addition to not having enough space for indoor parking or insufficient room, we have really insufficient space for our staff. If COVID taught us nothing at all, it's having a large amount of people in a small space is not only not ideal, but not in keeping with best practices for infection control. There is not appropriate space for both our vehicles and our staff to decontaminate between calls involving infectious diseases, and that is a significant problem. We can look at things as simple as cramped crew quarters, not enough locker space. There's one shower at Lindsay Base, so obviously getting our staff, both prepared to come in for shift, but also clean, decontaminated, and ready to go home to their families is a concern and an issue that we're constantly struggling with. We are at maximum capacity. There is no room for any more staff. We've made do as long as we can, but we're looking at very high renovation costs to make those facilities suitable for the evolving needs of paramedic services and fragmented operations that we'll talk of more in a few slides. I've mentioned that, or perhaps now mentioning that paramedic service has never had a purpose-built facility. In the time of the municipality, that has never been the case. And for over 2 decades, we've been managing in outdated facilities, but facilities that are also fundamentally unsuitable for emergency services. That, while we have been making do, that's come at a cost of efficiency, it's come at a cost of service delivery in terms of location, response times, etc. And that paramedic service demand is only expected to increase, and it's supposed to increase by 48% by 2034. And it's really critical that we have the infrastructure, the facilities to support not only our current needs, but the, support that growth that's expected in our community. As part of our master plan, various sites and locations were modeled, and they were modeled based on our current call distribution. They were also modeled based on response time, as well as being centrally and conveniently located to points of interest. So for a paramedic service, that's obviously centrally located to the hospital and major corridors in and out of Lindsay, so Highway 35, Highway 7, etc. So those sites that were modeled include Angeline Street South, Angeline Street North, our current location at 89 St. David, Greenfield Avenue, which is on the west side of Lindsay by the TSC store, if you're familiar, in and around the area of the airport and in and around the area of the previous location of the Ops Community Center. Out of that modeling, Angeline Street came out on top for reducing the travel time response time by about 1 minute to 1.5 minutes, which is critical in emergency situation, but also checking the boxes to be centrally positioned and located to those major corridors and centrally located to the hospital. So after that work was done in 2021, we started working closely with our colleagues at Community Services, Building and Property, as well as Realty Services, to pinpoint and identify an actual location. A proposed site has been identified at 230 Angeline Street South. That is property that's owned by Trillium Lakelands District School Board and is currently the home of the Adult Education and Alternative Learning Facility. The proposed site that is very suitable for the facility is in front of that existing building on the northwest corner of the property. And I'm very pleased to say that discussions have been very positive and forward moving to enter into a land lease agreement with Trillium Lakelands to construct the paramedic headquarters at that site. So our goal is to consolidate and streamline our operations. The new facility will merge 7 of the 11 paramedic locations into a single, more efficient space, and that includes the 2 Lindsay response stations, our community paramedic station in Oakwood, our training facilities, our administrative functions, both for operations, the 911 operations and community paramedicine, our logistics division, and vehicle and equipment storage. So certainly the consolidation allows us to streamline that operation, reduce the fragmentation that we currently have existing in our service, as well as the oversight and additional costs of maintaining all of the additional facilities. I'm going to turn it back over to James.
Thank you, Sarah. Today, we're excited to share the design concept of our new paramedic headquarters. This facility combines 3 essential infrastructure projects into one: the paramedics headquarters and fleet center, the city's dedicated backup IT server room, and the backup 911 call center for the Kawartha Lakes Police Department. When we began designing this new facility, our mission was clear. We wanted to create a space that reflects the exceptional level of service our paramedic team delivers to our community every day. Our strategy is focused on centralization, cost efficiency, and operational cohesion. By designing this headquarters to meet today's needs, we are also laying the groundwork for future growth. This approach ensures that as our community evolves, our paramedic services can adapt accordingly. Let's look at the rationale behind our construction consolidation, which is grounded in 3 key elements. 1, cost efficiency. By integrating these 3 projects, we can significantly reduce both construction and operational costs. This streamlined approach eliminates the need for duplicating efforts and infrastructure, leading to meaningful savings over time. 2, optimized space usage. Consolidation allows us to maximize space use. This means we can utilize our available space more efficiently, avoiding the need for finding or creating vacant space in other locations. 3, ideal location. With this location being close to both the Kawartha Lakes Police Station and City Hall, adding in the backup IT server room and backup 911 call center made perfect sense. This proximity allows both the police and IT departments to have easy access to the site for routine maintenance or in the event of an emergency. As we plan for future needs, our focus is on building a foundation that can support growth and adaptability. Key elements of the strategy include scalable infrastructure. Our design will accommodate growth in personnel, services, and technology over the next 20 to 30 years. This ensures that as the demand for paramedic services increases, our infrastructure can expand without needing a complete overhaul. Adaptability. We will incorporate flexible designs that allow for future expansion within the paramedic building. This flexibility ensures that our facility can evolve to meet changing operational requirements and community needs. Advanced infrastructure. Adequate space will be allocated for essential functions, such as training, logistics, fleet storage, and repairs. These areas are critical for supporting long-term operational efficiency, ensuring our paramedic services are always prepared for future challenges. By prioritizing scalability, adaptability, and advanced infrastructure, we are setting ourselves up to effectively handle future growth and changes in demand. Effective cost management and budget adherence are crucial for our project success. We plan to achieve this through the following strategies. 1, a unified budgeting. Integrating costs for all 3 projects into a single budget streamlines project management. 2, long-term savings. By sharing essential utilities such as power, backup generator systems, and security infrastructure, we significantly lower our overhead costs. This shared system approach leads to long-term operational savings. 3, economies of scale. By addressing multiple construction needs simultaneously, we can leverage bulk purchasing to achieve significant discounts. This optimizes our resource allocation and leads to lower overall construction costs. These strategies aim to keep our project within budget while delivering long-term financial benefits through reduced operational costs and enhanced efficiencies. Finally, let's discuss our commitment to sustainability within this project, which will be realized through several guiding principles. 1, long-term environmental impact. Our decisions will focus on reducing the ecological footprint of the new paramedic headquarters. This includes selecting sustainable materials, minimizing waste, and implementing practices that promote a positive long-term impact on the environment. 2, resource conservation. We will emphasize the efficient use of materials, energy, and space throughout the project's life cycle. This may involve energy-efficient designs, recycling construction materials, and optimizing space to reduce unnecessary resource consumption. These strategies not only support sustainability, but also contribute to cost savings. 3, a holistic approach. Environmental considerations will be integrated into every phase of planning and construction. This ensures that sustainability is a core focus and not an afterthought, aligning our project with broader corporate sustainability goals. By prioritizing these principles, we aim to create a model of sustainability that reflects our commitment to environmental stewardship and responsible resource management. And I'm going to pass this on to Brandon and Ryan.
Thank you. So as was previously mentioned, today we will be presenting the initial design concepts and budgeting for this project. But before we get into that, I wanted to talk a little bit about the design process to get to the stage we're at today. So as was previously mentioned, the City of Kawartha Lakes has not previously had a fit-for-purpose facility of this type. And so we started off with initial site tours, reviewing other facilities around the province with leadership from Paramedic Services, as well as the team from Kawartha Lakes and our consultant team. Out of this, we were able to come up with a checklist of needs and requirements and kind of ideas, best case or best use case scenarios. This was used to then develop an initial program, which we then went through various design reviews with Paramedic Services leadership to develop preliminary design concepts. These design concepts were then circulated to the larger team within paramedic services to solicit input from team members and better understand fit for purpose, fit for use, and the priorities of the facility users, which has led to this refined planning of a finalized schematic design scheme, which we will then use to progress to the next stages. In and amongst all of these conversations, we have also had preliminary conversations with members of the planning department, as well as the building department, to discuss potential next steps with this project. Out of these processes, we came up with a programming that includes a 35,000 square foot garage to park 39 paramedic services vehicles, including a combination of ambulance and community paramedic, and an administrative building, which is a 2-story facility at just over 26,000 square feet, featuring office space for administrative functions, training spaces, crew touchdown areas, a locker room for active duty crew, logistics support spaces, and of course a shelled space for future program expansion, as well as the spaces for services, including the backup servers as previously mentioned. The facility, as also discussed on Angeline Street, is on the screen now. As you can see, this is the preliminary site plan. The facility is located frontwards towards the street on Angeline. The north is to the top of this page. So the vehicle bays are located to the eastern portion of the site, with the administrative portion, public-facing side of the building facing out towards Angeline Street. This is to promote kind of an inviting facility that not only paramedic services in the city of Kawartha Lakes can feel proud of, but also is inviting to the public and members of the community. Parking for both staff and visitors, as well as the primary ambulance entrance to the site, would be along the existing 2-way bidirectional traffic on the south side of the property, and ambulance exit from the garage bays responding to calls would be out of the 1-way lane at the north of the facility. This is the schematic lower ground floor plan. The green area is the garage bays as discussed previously, while the yellow represents the administrative and crew side of the facility. As you can see on the north side, the green, the east side of the building, the green, the 39 ambulance-sized vehicle parking stalls are there, as well as wash areas, service areas, logistics and loading areas for the crews to service and properly provision the vehicles. The lower half of the building there, the yellow, is the administrative side, as we mentioned. On the lower level, this is divided into 2 halves. To the left side of this page is the administrative focus. This is the primary office spaces for administration, community paramedics, and clerical office spaces, as well as boardroom, meeting rooms, reception for public that may be coming into the facility, and some file storage functions. There's also a connection through that stairwell at the top left of this page, which we'll discuss when we get into the additional admin space on the upper floor. The right side of this plan highlights the primary crew areas, centralized around a locker room with a day room for crew that are on duty, fitness space, office for some of the more direct frontline crew functions as well. These are divided in the middle with a lobby atrium area, which connects both these functions, but also provides the welcoming space for any public or outside members of the community that would be coming into this facility. And all sides of this building have direct access into the garage bays to enhance and encourage direct access to those vehicles for response times should there be a call that comes in and direct response required. On the upper floor, again, we can divide the facility on the left and the right-hand side of this image. So again, this would be north and south. On the left-hand side, we have some additional office spaces connected to that stairwell that leads down into the lower level office space. More central to this plan is the training facilities, the simulation lab, training classroom, and some storage space for those training activities, as well as a kitchenette lounge debrief space directly outside of those classroom functions. There's connection to that main lobby reception area, and then to the right side of this page, we've got our mechanical service space, the 911 communication center and backup server, as was previously discussed, and the additional shelled space for future expansion of programming. And I don't know. So as you can see on the screen, this is an initial concept artist rendering of the facility. This is still in the works. This is a preliminary version of it, but gives a sense of the scale and the layout of the facility and the organization and the massing of it. The idea here being that we want to provide a facility that matches the aesthetic and fits in with the context of Kawartha Lakes, while at the same time showcasing all the metrics discussed earlier with the sustainability, modernization of the services, and providing the best services to the city of Kawartha Lakes from the paramedic services. I'll now pass it off to Ryan to talk on some of the numbers related with this proposal.
Thanks, Brandon. Good afternoon, everybody. So I'm here today to go through some of the numbers of the project on the values that we've kind of assessed at this point in time of the project. So these numbers have been developed in consultation with ourselves, being the primary architects on the project, along with our full team of consultants, including other designers and engineers, and then also produced through our quantity surveyor and our cost consultant as well. So with the numbers being provided, we've broken it down into three categories. So we have hard construction costs in the top portion. In the middle portion, we have contingencies for the project. And in the lower portion, we have soft costs that we're developing for the project as well. So we look at these three numbers because they do form very different categories. The hard construction costs really are the values to produce the construction of the work. And in those, we look at a cost per square foot for the new facility. We take the site development as an overall allowance for what we expect for the development to require. Looking at a stipulated STUM contract, we have our general requirements and our fees for the contractors included in this as well. And then a design and pricing contingency that's set at 15%. So in that first list of numbers there, the requirements for the general contractor and the fees for the general contractor are industry standards at the 10% and 3%. And the 15% in the design and pricing allowance is standard at the Class D estimate. That is a number that adjusts as we fine tune our level of cost estimates as well that we will be providing as the project progresses. In our contingencies, we've broken it out with 5 contingencies that are standard within any project. So we've looked at escalation. So our escalation is set at 4.5% in a range of 9 months to 12 months. We look at escalation up to the point of when we start construction, but also consider that a little bit of it lapses into the beginning of construction as well. We have looked at a sustainability contingency for future decisions of the project, a construction contingency as well. There will be items that come up within construction that we may not know at this time. There could be things in the ground, there could be things around site servicing that we have to consider as well. We also carry an owner post-contract contingency should there be any design changes that come as a reflection of the needs of paramedic services or of Kawartha Lakes. And then also looking at a contingency built in for specialty systems and equipment, as there will be some items that are selected along the path of design that facilitate the needs of paramedic services as well. Soft costs, again, are broken down as kind of the third portion to our project. A few of these items, we have a kind of a line of sight on them to have a good understanding of where they lie. As Brandon mentioned, we've had conversations with the planning department and building department to generally understand what the cost of the site plan application is, the building permit applications, and then also working with the municipality on development charges. We look at FF&E, which is furniture, fixtures, and equipment. We hold that as a 10% allowance at this time in the project until we know exactly what the requirements are for the facility. We know that there is a heavy need on the administrative side of the building, but also there is some specialty items that are required on the vehicle side of the building as well. We also are carrying costs for survey and geotechnical work, which has generally been completed to about a 95%. And then we also carry a contingency for additional consultant scope of work This could come with things that come out of the site plan application. We may need a traffic consultant, for example, and we just hold that money as an allowance as well. So as a further breakdown, so escalation, as I mentioned, at 4.5% for the 9-month escalation period. We are currently targeting about a 9-month window to get into construction starting, which would put us, generally speaking, into a Q2 of 2025, which is where we are looking for the project to escalate to. We do know through the last 5 years, escalation has been a very robust number and difficult to track at times. Across the industry right now, generally speaking, we're looking at a 6 to 8% escalation rate per year in a per annum situation. And that's very consistent across the board with all types of projects with this complexity and this timeline as well. So the sustainability allowance is giving us and the project the ability to look at various items. We know that there is a responsible and conscious effort across all municipalities and definitely in this community as well to look at sustainable items that would better suit the building through efficiencies. And as we look through those designs, you know, we've noted 3 here. There'll be others that come into there, but you know, looking at enhanced building envelopes so that we're spending less money on energy to heat and to cool the building, specialty systems, and we could be looking at photovoltaics or solar panels as options in there. And then also being environmentally conscious with our material selection as we design the facility. So our construction contingency, as quickly as I mentioned there before, we're holding a 5% construction cost. And this contingency does account for those unknowns that we don't know about. You know, inevitably there could be something in the ground. It could be as simple as a rock that we have to move that may have additional cost to it. You know, the utilities and services, we have talked to the local utilities, but not in great detail. We know there could be items that circumvent around that. We also look at constructability and construction sequencing. If we do start in Q2, we are going to be able to predict what those winter months may look like to us as far as what construction events have to happen in those cold and snowy months. If we get a winter like last year, those things change. If we get a winter like past years, we could see those numbers be increased as well. So that is just an allowance to hold within the construction. And then the owner post contract, as I mentioned, this is for items that may come up as a direct relationship to the needs of paramedic services or Kawartha Lakes that have to enter into this facility. And specialty systems. So breaking this down a little bit further, there are certain items that happen to support in a better manner the vehicle maintenance areas, you know, specialty components to delivering the training. And also we could be looking at loading area infrastructure as well, knowing that this building does facilitate a lot of deliveries. So those items all give us that ability to look at them and further investigate under that allowance as well. We wanted to bring to you 3 case studies quickly, just to give an idea that where this project kind of sits in the current landscape, you know, in the realm of what we've seen in current projects and past projects that do have relevance to this facility. So Hamilton Fire and Police, we're doing a joint facility for them right now. It's 43,000 square feet. To go back to this facility, we're 61,000 square feet. So it's a combined police fire station with administration, communications, and 911 services in it as well. It's very typical at its site works as far as what we're looking at in this project. There's a $37 million construction price tag to that with contingencies. That is slated to start in the summer of next year, and we're looking at $860 a square foot on that project. For reference, the project we're talking about today, we're looking closer to that $700 square foot number. Case study 2, so Brampton Fire Emergency Service Headquarters. We facilitated this project for the city of Brampton. It was completed in 2022. So roughly the same size of building, 68,000 square feet, slightly larger. There's an active fire station, administration, and training in that facility. It was a $55 million construction cost. There were more initiatives in that project on the site. and some extra technology integrated into that project. If we look at the typical standard escalation rates in the current markets, it pushes that project probably to a square foot cost around the $930 a square foot. Case study number 3, so as Brandon mentioned, we did visit other facilities. We did visit the Waterloo Paramedics headquarters. They provided us with some stats while we were there, and we did further investigations on our side as well. So 48,500 square feet, 2-story building. It's the same functions as far as administration, training, paramedic station, and vehicle logistics. Fairly standard site works on that project as well. The tendered budget was in 2018, so prior to COVID, was $21 million. As I mentioned, the escalation rates through COVID over the last 5 years have been very robust. Taking those standard rates that have been applied through the industry, this project would be anticipated right around that $800 a square foot number. So in relation to these 3 projects, and looking at $700 a square foot for this project, gives us the anticipation and the feeling that we are well within an achievable and successful project, but also being very responsible in the funds that are being allocated to the design that we have here as well. And I'll turn it back to James here.
Thank you very much. And we've entered the question portion of this presentation. I will receive questions. If I can answer, I will. If not, I will defer to some of the other subject matter experts on our panel here.
So do you just want questions on the presentation, or are we doing, do you want questions on the report as well?
I think they'll do either, but it's up to you. If you want to receive the presentation, go right to the report and then just do it all at once.
So council, would you like, we'll receive the presentation and we'll go to the report and we'll do the questions on the report, which refers to the presentation. Are we happy doing that? Everybody okay? Councillor Warren?
I'll move to receive through you.
Okay, I have a motion to receive, seconder. Councillor Perry, all in favor? There we go.
And I have a couple questions.
I'm sure. We'll do that when we get to the report, okay?
Okay.
Let's see. Chief Johnson, did you want to give an overview of the report at all, or you're fine just going straight to questions? Okay. Let's get a motion then to receive the report. Councillor Richardson, Deputy Mayor McDonald, and we'll do questions. And Councillor Warren, go ahead with your questions.
For you, Mr. Mayor, thank you. This is pretty exciting. I just want to be clear about the 7 buildings. So I'm looking at my area in Bobcaygeon that services the north and also east and Fenelon Falls. I know that those buildings are less than opportune. So I'm just wondering, are they slated to close and come into Lindsay? Would have a problem with that, and that response times would be not a good thing. So that's my first question.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to the councillor, no, Bobcaygeon is not impacted by the consolidation of the facilities. There is a footnote throughout the report. I'd have to look at it to refer you exactly, but the footnote indicates the 7 facilities that are included in that consolidation.
Okay, just on that though, the reason for doing this is housing and putting into garages, ambulances. And I know in Bobcaygeon, that site is less than opportune, as I said, because you share with fire services. So I'm just wondering going forward how we will deal with that in that, because that's the reason that you're doing this. I see most of the development's going to happen in Lindsay, but one of the main reasons is putting ambulances in garages so different things don't freeze within the ambulance. So my question would be, what about Fenelon Falls and Bob Cajun?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to the councillor. The centralization is a very effective model to include resources in one general area, and that works very well in the south. Unfortunately, Kawartha Lakes is sprawling in terms of geography, and we can't do that for all stations if we're to sufficiently cover the north off. So the Paramedic Service Master Plan indicated the consolidation and centralization of the southern resources, as well as training, administration, logistics, vehicle and equipment storage. But there is a plan later in the master plan, which went right through to 2031 to address the northern stations, which would include Fenelon, Bob Cajun, and Coboconk. So happy to connect on that offline or at a much later date. But this just includes the southern consolidation, centralization of those facilities.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Richardson.
Thank you, and through you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you very much for the presentation, all of you. It is exciting news, and I really do appreciate the case studies that were presented because it really gives you a fulsome look when you're looking at costs. My one question, well, I have a few, but the one is, we're looking to do that approval of the lease agreement through this report today. What is the funding formula for the city as owned, moving through that leased portal as opposed to owning property and moving through that portal?
Director.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. If I understand the question correctly, you're asking the funding model specific to the lease of the land, Councillor?
Yes, I mean, we're moving towards a lease, apparently, and we are in this report. Is that a 50-50 split with the province?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I am looking to the CAO on my right, nodding his head. So the answer would be yes, that is eligible for the 50% grant.
Great. And what other funding model equations are we looking at when we're moving through this process as well?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to the councillor, I'm happy to answer the question quickly and say yes. A lease would be subject to 50% cost recovery from the province through operating grant. But I think there's a few other. Is Adam Found on the line?
I believe he is, yes. Is our favorite economist there?
Yes. Much more experienced in this area.
Did you hear the question, Dr. Found?
Yes, I did. And can you hear me okay, Mr. Mayor?
Yes, we can. Go ahead.
Yes, so there is another component to the recovery of the lease costs, and that is through development charges. So since the overall facility is 35% recoverable by development charges, then so too is the lease, as leasing costs in respect of land are DC recoverable under the legislation.
Great, and that does help the bottom line at the end of the day, so I appreciate that answer. We also talked about the 39 ambulances that are going to be in the bays, and you talked about expansion capacity. What would that number look like for the future?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to the councillor, right now we need indoor parking in our southern facilities for 25 units. So that leaves the room for expansion of 35% that would then be eligible for development charge recovery. So that was the threshold, whatever we need now, plus 35% growth in order to leverage those development charges fully. I do want to add something here that the depreciation on any facility would be 50% recoverable as well. So the upfront capital investment is not, that would be fully tax supported, but how that new facility is depreciated over the period of time is 50% cost recoverable. So something to consider when you're looking at a large amount of investment.
I think you just put the icing on the cake there for me, so thank you.
Director, did you have something?
I was just through you, Mr. Mayor, going to expand a little bit more on the funding model. So Dr. Found has spoken to the 35% that's development charge related. The rest would be debenture funded. It's our recommendation we do it over as long a period as Infrastructure Ontario allows, which would be 30 years. Doing some rough math and some interest at this point in time, debenturing 32.5 million over 30 years would equate to about 1.5 to 1.75 pending the interest rates. And then to the chief's notes of the 1.75 debt, you would be receiving approximately 300 to 400,000 amortization grant to offset that. So the impact over a 30-year time period makes this more affordable.
Councillor Joyce.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, I've got a few questions. Some of them have already been answered. So what's the life cycle of the building itself?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for the question. So we build these buildings for a 50-year plus life cycle to these facilities. They are legacy buildings to hold that length of time. So that comes in the quality of the build, but also looking at this possibility for future expansion, knowing for the growth period for the paramedic services as well.
Okay, so one can argue it's about $1 million per year over a 50-year period.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, yes.
Yeah, okay. Page 19 was excellent in that breakdown. I really appreciated those comparisons to other buildings you're doing. So our $696 per square foot looks good compared to these other buildings you're doing. So it's good to see this layout of costs, but here's what's missing. We've got some great buzzwords here: cost efficiency, long-term savings, economies of scale, unified budgeting, reduced operational costs, and resource conservation, but no dollar figures attached to any of that. So I'm not expecting you to pull that out right now, but it'd be nice to, and I know it's hard to quantify that, but if we could get some dollar numbers, figures, some approximations. Taxpayers need to know what value they're getting here. It all makes sense, not arguing it, but if we can get some quantified dollars around what we're saving, what those cost efficiencies are, it sure makes that $50 million price tag look more palatable, right? So that's one thing. The number of bays, I got that, thank you. This area has some large mature trees. Has that been taken into account? I hate to see them go. Are they going to stay, or are they getting cut down?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor. So that is part of the design consultation that we go through. So we do have a landscape architect and arborist on the project as well. There are some large trees on that property that are being assessed to understand how long their lifespan would be. If they were in a position where they wouldn't naturally fit in with the building, we do look at landscaping compensation for that as well within our designs as well. But that arborist report hasn't been fully completed at this time, but will be completed as part of that site plan application as well to assess those trees.
Thank you very much. And my next question is on the lease itself. The first right of refusal, and should this land gets, Trillium Lakelands decide to sell the land. I'm reading through the fine print here, just trying to grasp. We do have first right of refusal to buy the land, but if we don't, a new owner, are they, is it built in here that they have to continue the lease agreement with Kawartha Lakes? And it's up to a 100-year lease. Is that embedded in here? Because I was trying to find the exact wording to ensure that we're good in that.
Who's your question to? Who is your question to?
I guess that would be to either CO Taylor or Director Bukabu.
Well, I see
Or
that
that.
Ms. Carlson is on the
okay.
line.
Or
Do you have an answer to this,
Solicitor
Robin?
Yes, we negotiated a buyout clause. So if the lease was terminated early, then proportionate to that termination, the early termination, we would. Oh, sorry, that was the draft. My apologies. There is no early termination in this, so that it would be at the end of the term that there's the buyout, which would be the end of the life of the building.
Years.
the term is 25 years. It can be automatically renewed for another 25 years, 4 times.
Yes.
But what happens if they decide to sell the land? What is our position?
So if they decide to sell the land, and the building itself is estimated to be at the 25 year is the life of the building. So if we decide to continue with the use of the building past 25 years and the land is sold, then what could happen is we could purchase the property itself for fair market value.
Yes, I understand that. My question is, if a third party purchases the land, is it embedded in our contract that they have to continue the lease with Kawartha Lakes?
No. That's why we have the first right of refusal, is that enables us, if we want to continue on past the 25 years, that we could buy the land to ensure that that we would continue to use the property. If we decided we were done with the building, then we probably wouldn't take the right of first refusal.
Well, then that's my cause of concern, because the lease agreement is a good deal for us. You know, we're not paying the upfront cost for land. I'd hate to see us all of a sudden, we build a $50 million building and that's going to, life cycle is 50 years, probably extend it beyond that, and say at the 15-year mark, all of a sudden we're forced to buy the land. I'd like to see language in the contract, if it's not too late, that a new owner can buy the land, but must stick to the lease agreement. Instead of forcing us, boxing us into buying the land.
No, sorry. So within the term, the initial term, if the land is sold, then we would continue to have rights with the new owner. However, at the end of the term, and prior to renewal, there could be a sale of the land, which in that case, we would be approached with the right to purchase the land, or it would be sold to a third party, which wouldn't need to honor the lease.
So that forces us in buying the land, because we're not going to give up a $50 million building to a third party. Okay, I don't like the terms of the contract. Thank you.
Q. Councillor Ashmore.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a couple of quick questions. The first one to Chief Johnston. You mentioned about response times, and that's always critical, the number one thing. In your studies and your models, you said you'd done modeling with the new location. I'm just comparing it to the St. David Street. You're confident through the modeling that you're able to get to the east side of Lindsay and to the Sturgeon Lake communities, to the Pigeon Lake communities and everything in between, and down to Omimi and Manvers area, to cover that in just as quickly or faster time when you're changing to a centralized system instead of a decentralized. Whereas right now we have ambulances that are strategically located. I'm just talking about ambulances right now in different locations, but Willowdale Court and Dunsford, just for an example. But you're confident that the modeling shows that you will have quicker response times, even if you have to get onto Highway 7. Highway 7 is like 12,000 vehicles per day. And Highway 36 is a busy highway, but certainly nowhere near that. You're confident you can get with Angeline Street and Highway 7, with so much traffic on that side of town, Lindsay, the southwest corner, that it's a good move?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to the councillor, the modeling looked at our current and future call distribution. So where the vast majority of calls are and how fast we can get there. You know, I do have faith and confidence in the modeling to say that that Angeline Street corridor improves the general response time by a minute to a minute and a half compared to what it is now. That Angeline corridor is close, it's central in terms of accessing those corridors. The one thing that the master plan did point out, that at full build out of the MZOs on the east side of town, there is the potential to need an additional post there for crews to move to that east side of Lindsay during their shift to service that area. I think we need to have more information to know who's moving into that eastern development, to know what kind of volume is going to be. But currently, I'm very confident that the centralized location is appropriately positioned and well suited for the Angeline Street location.
Okay, thanks. And the second question was maybe perhaps to Manager Smith. Obviously, we've looked into grants. Are there grants available for this, for the structure itself? And I mean like really good grants, like just substantive grants, like we used to get grants for building community centers and things like that, Canada Builds and the like. Are there big grants available that we can access?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to the councillor. We are in the initial stage of looking into this. We will be working with Salter Pilon to explore all those avenues. I do have consultants I've also met with who are assisting in other projects for energy management, and they have grants for those types of things. So it's all going to tie in. We have multiple energy management plans that are moving forward, so we will be exploring it. Off the top of my head, I don't have a grant in mind, but there are lots of opportunities out there that we're going to explore.
Thank you. Thank you.
I was just going to add to that, that a grant did come forward for the fiber optic line for the IT backup server and the 911 communication center for the police. So that fiber optic line is required for both of those. So there is a grant already submitted for that to run the line. And then I think to your question, a lot of that grant comes from the recovery of the depreciation of the building once it's built. So that doesn't help with the upfront cost, but certainly that grant to offset the depreciation does come back to the city.
Deputy Mayor McDonald.
Thank you. Through you. Question, I'm just reading the lease here. And it says that the tenant shall have the right upon providing written notice to the landlord not less than 90 days prior to the end of the initial term to renew its lease for a 3-year term of 25 years. You just finished saying that the building's only good for 50 years. So after 25 years, we're going to have to sign a lease for another 75 years, whereas the building's only going to be good for 50 years. So here we're going to have a building that's 50 years old, that's how long you said the building's going to last, and now we're going to have a lease for another 50 years after that.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to the councillor. Yes, a building, as Ryan pointed out, is good for 50 years, but that would mean us not maintaining it or looking after it, right? There's going to be preventative maintenance and other plans put in place to ensure that this facility lasts longer than 50 years and we get, the most bang for our buck.
Okay, perfect, thanks. And then you mentioned discounts and savings, and I have to also agree with Councillor Joyce's that I'd like to know what they are. If you know there's going to be discounts and savings out there, why wouldn't we know what they are and before we start building?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, it's a great question. Yes, we haven't dug deep yet into those, but those numbers we'll pull for you, and we'll show you how the consolidation specifically will help with construction cost immediately, and then also with consolidating the 7 other paramedic centers where we're going to see cost savings on the operational level as well.
And the next question is that you mentioned design changes. I would hope once we design this, we don't have any design changes. We haven't built it yet, and we're talking about design changes.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor. I mean, that is 100% the intent and hope of every project. But we always plan for worst case scenarios, and that fact that there could be something that comes into that time, there might be another need for the facility. But that's our job, is to control that cost and not have to dip into those contingencies for reasons that are unforeseen.
Another one is that I know this property very well because I was born and raised right across the road from that. Now, my laneway goes right into that laneway, so I know the property, and you might find something on the ground, but it's always been apple trees and pears trees. I think that's the only thing you're going to find. But also, there's a school close by, and there's no sidewalks on that side. And lots of kids walk on the road or on the side of the road with no sidewalks on that side of the road. So I'm just kind of wondering if there's anything planned to have a sidewalk on that side, because many kids walk out to that St. Thomas.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor, to the councillor. So we do anticipate those conversations to be progressed when we go through the site plan process with the planning department. Yes, that is an item in our mind as well, about that safe control of population from a vehicle standpoint and as well as a pedestrian standpoint as well. So we do not know the full details of what that looks like, but as part of that master planning of the site with planning, we would assume that those questions will be addressed through those periods.
My last question is, when you leave that facility, based on there's houses right across the road, are your sirens always on and lights on when you leave the building?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to the councillor, the lights will always be on. The sirens are an additional tool to get people's attention. So obviously that would depend on traffic and those sorts of things, but it's not an arbitrary turn on as soon as you put the vehicle into drive.
So it's safe to say at 11 o'clock at night when there's no traffic like that, you aren't going to have your sirens on, you're just going to move with the lights on.
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Perry.
Thanks very much, Mayor, and thank you for the presentation, the level of detail, and all the considerations that have been taken into account. I also want to thank Councillor Warren for her question about Fenland Falls and Bob Cajun, and thank you, Chief, for your clear response on the status of those locations. Just one thing I've found, I know that I'm sure you've thought of this, but to double check, I've never seen a building built that the next day was too small. And so I was wondering if, either the location was chosen with, or the design has been put together such that there is indeed room for growth before the 30-year end of the building's useful life. Thank you.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to the councillor. Great question. I live this every day, and Sarah and the team can attest that I have argued, or I have made my opinion known every single time, how important that need for future growth is, because we're always running out of space. So as you'll see on the design, there is a shelved space area. It'll be completed and ready for future use at any point, but we're thinking about the long-term savings of, we can build it now for X amount. If we were to add this addition and come to you later on, it's going to be 10 times, 15 times, depending on how further down the road we need to have that expansion. So we are planning flexible space and long-term growth space.
I'm sure you were. You're the experts. Thank you.
Thank you. I have a couple of questions. If Manager Found is on the line, it might be for him. Thanks. Or Director Bokaboom, I don't know who wants to answer. It's about development charges. Within specialty systems and equipment, one of the costs that's been included is development charges. We are going to pay development charges to ourselves, and then we're going to pay for part of this building with development charges. Sounds like a bit of a shell game. Can you try and explain that to me, please?
Yes, I can, and through you, Mr. Mayor. So there's really two sides to this equation which are independent of one another. So let me talk about the financing side first, because that's a little simpler. So on the financing side, you'll see that 35% of the total cost is recoverable from development charges. And that really aligns with the excess capacity that the facility will have once it is built. On the expenses side, as you noted, Mr. Mayor, there is an item for development charges, and that is an item that reflects the development charges that would otherwise be payable for this facility if it were not for the fact that that municipalities, including the city, are exempt from development charges. So the reason for the expense being there, even though there's an exemption, is that the legislation also states that every exemption which causes a shortfall in the DC reserve must be made up, or rather that shortfall must be made up from another source. And so even if we didn't include this as an expense item, we would still have to find those monies from somewhere to replenish the DC reserve. And so by including this as an expense item in the project, we are using the project as the external source for the replenishment of the DC reserve. And so I understand what you mean by it appearing like a shell game, but it's really not. It's really two independent calculations that are just occurring at the same time. And the reason why we're using the project itself as the source for replenishing the DC reserve is to ensure that growth shares in the burden of that replenishment. And that occurs on the financing side of the project, where we use development charges to help pay for the cost. So I'm hoping that makes a bit of sense. I know it's a little complicated, but that is what's happening on both ends of the project's finances.
I think it's reasonably clear to me. Moving on with another question, and this is maybe for the Director of Development Services, or I'm not sure, but there's an item on there for building permit fees. Can council not waive building permit fees for city buildings? And, or is it not advisable? Why would we pay a building permit fee?
Yeah, thanks for the question, Mr. Mayor. The building permit fees fund obviously contributes to a large budget and covers a lot of our operations. There are provisions in a series of policies at the city that allow for council to exempt certain projects from certain fees, both policies and bylaws. So I will certainly take this back to the department and just have a quick review over which particular fees, and to be honest, it would be not just limited to the building permit portion, but others as well, and be able to report back and continue working with the group in that regard and see where we can
Thank you.
save on costs.
Because I was just thinking, we do exempt, like, Women's Resource Center or the hospital or other folks. Why would we charge ourselves? It seems, I don't know, that we should be able to take advantage of it too. One of my questions has to do with contingencies, and I don't know who wants to answer it, but usually on large projects, my experience since being on council, and correct me if I'm wrong, our contingencies are usually in the 10, 12, I think I've seen them as high as 14 or 15%. When I add up the contingencies on this, I'm coming up to almost 29%, because the middle cost on your slide 19 is basically all contingencies, and it comes to 26.5, and then there's another 3% of hard construction costs and contingencies. which comes to 29%. I know when you made the presentation, you rationalized some of it, but I'm just questioning why the number is so high, because it comes out like when we're at 30% contingency, it seems like we're kind of being overly safe in terms of contingency. I don't know who, whether it's Ms. Volkaboom or Mr. Found or yourself.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, thanks for the question there. So I guess we can break down the contingencies into a few different pieces. So the one that's at 15% for the design and pricing allowance, that's a standard contingency based on the level of costing we're at. So we have a Class D estimate at this time, which doesn't have a ton of detail in it, but has a general sense of the building size and the general components that we're going to have within that building. As we progress to a Class C estimate, a B estimate, and an A estimate, that more or less is going to drop by 5% every time. So when we have a Class B estimate, we'd have less than a 5% contingency on the design items that we don't know about at this time. So that one you can really consider as a project cost that will get absorbed into the overall square foot cost of the building. The other contingencies that we look at here, so the construction contingency is one that we keep for safekeeping in those unforeseen items that happen within the construction. I mean, that could also factor into a high volatility in the steel market or the concrete market that we aren't able to plan for whatever reasons happen of that. When we look at our sustainability contingency, we've left that for decisions that have yet to be made on where this project is going to go on that sustainable aspect. We know there's many programs out there. As the one councillor mentioned, grants, there is possibility that grants could come up in that sustainability category as well. But we keep that right now because we don't know about all those choices being integrated into the building. The construction contingency and the owner post contract, those ones we don't necessarily fully execute on unless there is needs for that. So those two pieces there being 10%, you could say that those 10% are held for good faith in the project, but we try to stay away from them at any cost as we possibly can there. So I do understand that looking at the 29% does seem like a large number, but probably a third of that are items that we don't expect to necessarily activate ourselves on, but we keep those to ensure a successful budgeting of the project as well. And as we develop the design, those will be adjusted accordingly to where we feel the project lies at as well. The last one that we have here is the specialty systems. And again, that comes down to the further conversations with the paramedic service team, the user group, the stakeholders about what items are best suited for this project to be able to develop the needs and successfully provide a facility that's going to be able to work through all those items as well. So from the design standpoint, that's where the rationale comes from behind with those numbers that we're providing in the report.
Thank you. Just, I guess, one last thing that I'm sure Director Volkaboom has thought about. We generally only debenture once a project is completed, correct?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that is correct. We generally or typically borrow from our own working capital during the project. However, given the volume and the dollar value on this one, we might reconsider that and see if we can do some draws in term throughout the project.
That was my question, because I'm thinking about our cash flow as this project goes forward and the necessity to do that. And as I said, I was sure you had thought about it, but just wanted to check and make sure. I think that does it for me. Councillor Yeo, I believe you have a question.
Yeah, and thank you, and through you, Mr. Mayor. My question is centered around the design. So I hate looking at public buildings, and although they look nice, and there's just the frivolous nature put into the design. Like you walk into to a hospital and there's a 4-story atrium where millions of dollars have been, in my mind, wasted, where those could be beds instead of fresh air and good looks. So when it came to designing a building like this, how much functionality does all the space have? And be sure that there's no wasted space, no grandiose entrances. Like the OPP in headquarters in Aurelia, for example, I drive by there and it makes my skin crawl with all the glass and the waste, millions and millions of dollars of what in my mind is wasted just so they can look good. And it being a public building, I want to be assured that the design is taking accountability in account, I guess.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to the councillor. Thank you for your question. Yep, as you can see through the design, there really is just a lobby space that is open concept. The rest of it, and even that space, is purpose-built. Everything is purpose-built. Speaking with Chief Johnston, the goal of this was to build a purpose-built facility that was meant for enhancing the paramedic services administratively and their function throughout the city. So we really aren't here to have a showcase for the city. This is a building that is being designed for a purpose.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Joyce, you had another question?
I wasn't going to bring it up, but now Councillor Yeo did. I just noted that I'm all for accessibility, but it appears we have 2 accessible washrooms in the locker room for the crew, and it just doesn't make sense. I'm just throwing that out there.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to the councillor, the architects may say that I'm wrong here, but I'm pretty sure those are the decontamination washrooms. Yeah. So in a lot of paramedic facilities, they have a separate decontamination space. So as a crew comes back in, if they've been exposed to infectious disease, it could be anything from tuberculosis, meningitis, etc. They'll come in and they go into a decontamination washroom where they can, remove their clothing, shower, put new clothing on, and come out into a clean area. And as you go through that, it locks out. So instead of putting a separate decontamination in here, we actually put some larger areas where we could make use of space differently, creatively, so that they can be used for regular washroom or they can be used for a full decontamination accessibility area. So they're multi-purpose on the interior of the building.
Okay, thanks for the explanation. The symbol means accessible, but you're using it differently. Thanks for.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor, if I could add as well. The other thing about those washrooms too is that, yes, it's a locker room for the crew, but it's also a locker room for the facility as well. So if there were other individuals on the administration side, they still have access to that space as needed as well. So we are thinking about this building as a totality for paramedic services and not just necessarily segmenting it between administration, crew, and other staff as well.
Thank you. So we have a motion to receive, and we have a mover and seconder. Can I ask the mover and seconder if they're comfortable going to as printed rather than just to receive? Good with that? Okay, the motion is now as printed. Everybody good? Okay, all in favor? And that's passed. Thank you all for coming today, and thank you for putting up with our interrogations. Appreciate it. And let's go forward and build a really great building. Let's take till 10 after for a break, and we'll come back for automated speed enforcement. I'll call the meeting back to order. Item 6.2 on the agenda is a presentation on automated speed enforcement. Mr. Joe Kelly, whenever you're ready.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, through you to council. So it's clear that road safety is very important to council, as evidenced by council's support of many traffic initiatives, big and small, that staff has been working on, mostly nonstop. As you know, staff responds to traffic matters through cases, public petition, council direction, and general inquiries. So there's a lot of moving parts. I know that council is eager to learn about the latest in automated speed enforcement, but I would like to comment on the general format of this report. It may seem like I'm trying to write a postmodern script, jumping around topics and ideas, but it is important to see the path that we have taken and the work that is done to get to this point. So this presentation is to act as an easier way to process the information that you're about to receive. Available for discussion with me, of course, is Director Rojas, but also Manager of Provincial Offenses, Stephen DeMano, Manager of Prosecutions, Kim Page, and Manager of Municipal Law Enforcement and Licensing, Aaron Sloan, has zoomed in. They have been consulted in preparation for this report and provided important details contained within. There's going to be acronyms, but only 2. So the format of this report is partly due to how interconnected these traffic issues are. Here's a list of the reporting that is directly related to this report. Starting with the original presentation, when automated speed enforcement legislation was first introduced, there's a through line of updates, initiatives, recommendations, and council directions. This through line last concluded with the expectation for an update, with the addition of establishing a standalone speed board program. So as it stood at the time, the legislation requirements to implement an automated speed enforcement program introduced costs and burdens to the court system that was too great for smaller and medium-sized municipalities. Since council had moved forward with the multi-year community area speed limit project, it was determined that staff can provide updates to ASC after that project was completed and evaluated. So I'm going to refer from now on to automated speed enforcement to ASC. That's the one of 2 acronyms I'll be using for this. So for the community area speed limit project, also known as 40 is the new 50, I may call it the 40 area program or the community speed program. We analyzed speed statistics at various locations taken before and after the 40 area implementation. Overall, a 1 kilometer per hour speed reduction was achieved, which is not just insignificant, it's with the margin of error of the equipment, it's effectively no change in speed. This confirms the accepted theory that motorists drive by feel based on road conditions, environment, and perceived driver skill level. Without heavy enforcement, speed limit reductions have little effect on overall speeds. Still, as other municipalities adopt similar default speed limits, driver behavior can still change over time. In addition, the area speed limits can be supported by other traffic calming measures to increase their overall effectiveness. This ties to Council's previous request for a standalone speed board program. So an electronic speed radar sign is the sign that digitally shows the speed that drivers are going, and it flashes a light at them or tells them to slow down. We refer to them in the biz as a speed board. They have various sizes and placement options that you could have. Speed boards permanently installed at key gateways into communities and neighborhoods can increase compliance levels with the 40 areas within. Current staffing levels can support the installation of speed boards at key gateways to 2 to 3 communities per year with no increase to operating budgets. So some communities may have 2 gateways coming into it, some may have 1, some may have others. So 2 to 3 is a reasonable amount of communities. We will introduce a $25,000 budget item to the 2026 capital budget for installation of up to 6 additional speed boards per year to meet the objective of signing the gateways of 2 to 3 communities. Through 2025, staff will continue to use our current traffic calming methodology on a case-by-case basis as needed. This can often include temporary or permanent speed boards as well. So, automated speed enforcement, ASE. Since the legislation was first introduced, ASE can be established in school zones or roads designated through bylaws as a community safety zone. However, the cost and burden to the court system was such that only larger municipalities attempted to start an ASE program. However, recent amendments to the legislation allows municipalities to operate an ASE program through what's known as an administrative monetary penalty system. That's the second acronym. I'll be calling it AMP system or AMPS. So an administrative monetary penalty system treats speed violations similar to a parking ticket, which greatly reduces the barrier of entry for small and medium-sized municipalities. I will be presenting details on what an AMP system is, but first let's wrap our heads around the stages of an ASE program. The stages of an automated speed enforcement program include capturing violations, processing payments, managing hearings and appeals, and managing collections and plate denials. These stages remain the same whether only through the court system or through an AMP system. But I hope to demonstrate how AMPs would be vital for success for ASE in Kawartha Lakes. The first stage, which is capture violations, of course we need the vetted hardware to capture the imaging required, send them to processing. Hardware can be installed permanently or temporarily following the recommended signage that we need to set up. It can be powered solar or hardwired. Staff resources may be needed for installation or moving locations. Stage 2 is to process the violations. The violation must be validated. A human being must deem the plate in the image is readable and matches the plate in the citation. This technically needs to be Kawartha Lake staff, municipal staff, but I'll get into legal workarounds. The vehicle owner must be confirmed and the warning or citation must be sent. This can be somewhat automated by an AMP system. Staff would be required to manage the program and to validate the violations. There's also joint processing centers, I'll discuss later, that could be utilized to reduce staffing needs. Stage 3 is to process the payments. In-person and online payment would need to be available and it would need to interface with our financial system. This would use the resources of finance staff and customer service staff. An AMP system allows for online payment processing, which would reduce staffing resources required. Again, stage 4 is to manage hearings and appeals. This involves case management, hearings, appeals, dockets, petitions, and orders. This requires municipal staff as accredited as screening and hearing officers. An AMP system can streamline this by compiling an evidence package and help in scheduling the hearings. The final stage is managing collections and plate denials. This involves sending out notices, license plate denials in a report form, and the collections of unpaid dues. This requires program management staff and financial staff. An AMP system can automate parts of this stage. So getting into what a administrative monetary penalty system actually does, it's a process for payment, appeal, and collection of minor bylaw infractions. CKL does not currently utilize an AMP system. To establish one requires a series of bylaws and the necessary software and integrations linked to financial systems. However, vendors can offer startup support. It is designed to streamline the enforcement process and reduce dependencies on provincial offences court operations. It transfers disputes from the courtroom to the municipality using screening and hearing officers who can modify, cancel, or uphold penalties, reducing congestion in the courts. So the potential efficiencies that can be introduced by an AMP system is it can be utilized for parking matters, bylaw charges, ASE if and when implemented, red light cameras if and when implemented. It replaces in-court procedures for resolving Provincial Offensive Act charges. It can simplify the court process, making it less formal and demanding evidentiary procedures for the general public. It frees up court time for more serious issues. It allows greater flexibility as to where, when, and how the general public can interact with the city in resolving matters, creating a more streamlined, customer-focused service. So what's this going to cost? It's hard to pin down, unfortunately. There could be upfront costs for an AMP system based on its functionality, completeness, and available revenue sharing options. There would be fees for processing citations that come out of the penalty or through revenue sharing agreements. It would require staff resources to manage the program, and it would require staff to act as screening and hearing officers. Related, but on its own, an ASE program would consist of upfront costs of approximately $30,000 per camera, or it can be structured through an increase of the fee per citation that the vendor would take, or a revenue sharing agreement. Processing costs for ASE through an AMP system would be through a fee per citation or a revenue sharing agreement again. This would also require staff resources to manage the program, and requires staff to act as screening or hearing officers. There are options to utilize joint processing centers where other municipalities have gone through this and they've decided to set up their processing with enough staff to allow other municipalities to come on board. Technically, when the person that is using or that is reviewing our violations through the AMP system in a joint processing center is Kawartha Lake staff while they're doing it. So that's how we could reduce the staffing resources required to run a program. It's one way. So what's the revenue going to be like? So penalties for speeding are based on a dynamic rate per kilometer over the speed limit. So revenue is not a set rate per ticket. A portion of the paid penalty will not be coming to the municipality. There is a victim component fee, there's a plate lookup fee, there's the AMP vendor fee, a web processing payment fee. So, I mean, as an estimate, a typical infraction of 10 kilometers an hour over the speed limit that is paid without dispute through an AMP system will bring in approximately $40 of revenue. It should be noted that a well-functioning ASE program will generate reduced revenues over time. That's what we want. It should be considered net zero in order to fully fund the AMP and ASE programs. Oops. Finally, in case it's not clear, there's no tenable path for ASE in Kawartha Lakes without an AMP system. The court system is simply, it's too burdensome for the courts. Vendors are eager to offer solutions that range from fully turnkey, no upfront costs, to various levels of municipal involvement and ownership in the process. But they are holding the true costs closer to their chests, so we have to engage them if we really want to know the costs. The city could issue a call out for an expression of interest to hardware and software vendors who offer AMPS and ASE solutions. This would help determining obstacles, costs, staffing needs, program management, logistics between multiple vendors offering AMPS processing solutions. Knowing the multi-departmental coordination required can help inform the development of a request for proposal for a complete solution in a future budget if council decides. Thank you very much. We're open for discussion.
Thank you. I get a motion to receive the presentation. Councillor Perry, Councillor Joyce. Questions? Councillor Perry.
Thanks very much, Mayor, and thank you very much for the report. Very detailed, lots of information there. Just a couple of questions, if I could. And thanks for all your work so far and the work that you and I have done in particular for Ward 3. I know that this is similar to the experience of my council colleagues around the table. People speeding is now almost replacing roads as the number one concern I hear from constituents in my ward. And, you know, we have put in new signs, as you said. We have I've talked to the OPP detachment about increasing police presence in Ward 3, and it's been effective. I have the speeding ticket, unfortunately, to prove it. And, you know, now we're looking at what other municipalities have been doing, as you mentioned, in terms of ASE and AMP solutions. A couple of things just to start. In layperson's terms, I read the report. ASE is what people would call photo radar, correct? Yes, that's the photo radar component, the hardware. Can you just say a little bit about what the related AMP is?
Yeah, certainly. Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Perry. So originally the ASE legislation, you had to go through a court system, your municipal court systems to do that, the Provincial Offensive Act. Smaller and medium-sized municipalities begged the province to change this, to allow them to get in on this. And finally, they said you could run this a speed enforcement program through an administrative monetary penalty system. So they are separate but interlinked if we want them to be. And in my opinion, it's the only way we can go forward with getting a speed enforcement system in. So it's a series of legislative clauses that we engage by way of bylaw and through getting the right systems in place, software systems, having it integrated properly into the financial systems. And then suddenly we have an AMPS program, and then we could run ASC through it, or bylaw infractions, or other things we want to track through it. Does that answer your question? Fantastic.
Okay. Yes, thank you very much. Makes perfect sense. So linking those two together, they're almost inseparable for a municipality like ours, the realities that we face, I would assume.
For municipalities like ours and smaller, size, absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, thanks. Two more questions, if I could. One is, the need and use of the digital speed signboards has been fantastic, and thank you again. We have one right now on Long Beach Road in Ward 3, and I know the residents are really appreciative and noticing that sign as well. So I think I've been speaking with the south end of the city, Councillor Richardson, Mayor, and I think you'll find there'll be a motion to proceed this to council as printed. And also by council, a follow-up motion likely or being planned around doing just that, going out to vendors for an ASE, AMP acquisition, at least more information, as you mentioned. I'm really glad we don't have to go back to the report stage on that, because I know you just did a report at the last council, so it's nice that we don't have to reinvent the wheel. The information is there. We're at the vendor information stage. My only question would be, and perhaps it's to you or to our corporate services director, I mean, as council, we can set the direction of the cost. And I know that staff have recommended this be 2026. Ultimately, we can decide in council. I'm just wondering if there's a way that we can either not have a direction for, have to wait a year if funds become available, and perhaps there's wording we could work on for our motion at council, but a way to get that started and obtain that earlier than 2026 because of the urgency, because of public demand, should funds become available during the fiscal year. Thank you. That's all I have, Mayor.
Boom, did you want to comment?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, just to confirm that yes, should the funds become available, I don't see any reason why we couldn't proceed earlier.
Thank you, and I guess I'll be in the clerk's hands. We'll talk, Councillor Richardson and I, about what a motion next council would, the wording would look like, just to get that rolling rather than kind of a fatalistic approach to, can't do that until 2026. Well, maybe we can. And I thank you very much for your presentation, and thank you to the Director of Corporate Services for the clarification. That's good news. Thank you.
Councillor Richardson.
Thank you, and through you, Mr. Mayor. My sentiments are exactly as Councillor Perry's. However, I haven't pulled out all my hair yet, but I'm getting close. It has been a significant surge when it comes to speeding, I think, for everybody across the Kawartha Lakes. And we're always leaning on your resources. And this report really does bring it all together, saying, we're at a crossroads here. And it looks like we need to look at that expression of interest, because it is really the next step, because we don't have those resources when it comes to dealing with that additional work generated in our court system. We have a couple of folks right now, staffers, that are nodding their head. Like, this is something that we won't be able to manage. So we need to actually move forward for the entire city, because this is a huge concern. We have a lot more commuter traffic than we used to have that are still going to the GTA and are finding the quickest route to get there. We have locals that are, rushing kids to go here, go there. Your neighbors are rushing. I think this report, and I can't thank you enough, because we are always leaning on you, Supervisor Kelly, saying, how do we make it better for the city of Kawartha Lakes? And I think I'm in agreement with Councillor Perry. We need to move forward with this. So the next council meeting will move a motion forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Yo.
Thank you, and through you, Mr. Mayor. Along with the 40-kilometer project, the problem I have, and maybe you can answer this yes or no, two of the villages in my ward have Highway 35 as its main street, Coboconk and Norland. And so will this project be available to provincial highways if we approach the province, or once again, are we at the mercy of provincial law? Thank you.
Thank you for the question. It's a great question. Through Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Yo, the MTO has specific requirements for requesting speed signs like this, radar speed signs on the road. We have been through the process on some of the roads with Councillor Richardson. However, we've never asked them if they're willing to just take our money and put a sign up. So it's certainly discussion that could be had through this program. However, there would be some hurdles based on their policies. Thank you.
Thank you for that answer. And one thing I found with the MTO, they're never hesitant about taking our money. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Joyce.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you. Not real questions, just want to throw in my own commentary. I have on my phone here, this is released just yesterday. And I was going to call you to talk about this, and of course it's up on the agenda, from the region of York Region announced that they've collected $19 million over a course of 18 months with their program, from the beginning of 2023 till September of this year. Now, what it doesn't say, what we don't know is, well, how much did it cost? How much did they actually collect? And also, as Supervisor Kelly said, that as the program goes in, the revenue goes down because people more, they get caught, they start to comply more. So I'm in full support of this, but we need to hopefully get some data from other municipalities of that you can take that and then overlay it into our municipality, get some estimates of what you think initial revenue will be and what that graph will look like going down. But my gut feeling is this will be a revenue source in the long term, and that'd be a good, on the budget committee, we need a revenue source. So I'm in full favor for going forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor McDonald.
Yeah, thank you, thank you, Mr. Kelly, for this report. As we all know, we've met with him many times, everybody in this room, and we know that the number one issue is speeding, I know, in town. A couple of questions on the AMP and so on. Like, again, I think Councilor Joyce just mentioned it, of the cost to the taxpayers and how much it's going to cost. I'd really like to know by other municipalities what is the real cost of getting it going, and then the revenue that we could do that. So we need to know the cost and how we're going to do that. Like, we're a big municipality, so where are we going to start and who decides where it starts? And, we have 8 wards, so where does it start? And that's going to be a big decision, because every one of us sitting around the table have an issue and numerous issues in our area. So how do we do this fair?
Thank you for the question. Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Deputy Mayor McDonald. That is an excellent question. There's two components to that question. The first one being, what is this going to cost? Like, I completely agree. I had tried to get that information to you from other municipalities in time for this report. However, the smaller municipalities have signed revenue sharing agreements with vendors that are non-disclosable. Also, the vendors themselves contact us. They are willing to tell us that we can have whatever we want at no cost. It's all going to be funded through revenue sharing. They can set up the amps in 6 months. It's cheaper for them to set up unlimited locations than it is to set up one and move it for you. It's just a matter of how much of that revenue do we give them. That's what they're saying. But they're not telling me like what the actual cost is if we wanted to take some ownership in the process. The second part of that question was where does this happen? Like, where do we do it? Where is it fair? Well, at a previous report, I outlined methodology for scoring school zones first based on traffic volumes, pedestrian usage, vulnerable user use, and the collisions that have happened. They are scored based and compared to other school zones, and so it's we have the data to rank different areas. For roads that are not school zones, it would be council's right to pass bylaws to designate certain sections of road as community safety zones. Once they're community safety zones, if we have an ASC program, they can be placed there. They can also be ranked based on the road type, the traffic volumes, and the presence of vulnerable users and the collisions.
And that would be data from you, because you've done a lot of data on different roads that we've asked you, so you could use that data you've already collected to make that decision?
Precisely, yes.
Councillor Ashmore.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, through you to Supervisor Kelly. Joe, thanks for your presentation, and thanks for always being there when you answer questions all the time in emails, and sometimes come out to site visits, which is great. The speed boards, would they be, there was a picture of them there, and would they be, every one of those speed boards, would they be movable, mobile, each one of those?
Thank you. Yep. Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Ashmore, the intent of the program is to put them up permanently. So we would schedule them in a ranking as we go through our budget. However, we still have our normal traffic calming methodology procedures we take on a case-by-case basis through petition or council direction. When we look at those, A possible solution could be a speed board. It could be putting up a temporary one. It could be purchasing another one through the traffic calming procedures and not through the speed board, the proposed speed board program.
So just finally, so the prerequisite or the way to get one is to have a petition then in your methodology then to get one at a certain area, because the idea of when I'm on the LPP committee and we have the black hats, but black hats store data. They don't flash the number of the speed that you're going. They have a useful purpose. They store data, but people would like to see maybe some of them mobile. Would that be a possibility?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Absolutely. We already have a mobile one that we've taken ownership ourselves. Engineering staff goes out and affixes them. We're not relying on any other department who are already overworked. We put them out, we monitor them, we swap the batteries, we move them, and we schedule them in queue to go around. However, if there is a public demand for specific traffic calming measures or something more permanent, a petition would certainly be appreciated so we could schedule our work to study that.
Councillor Warren.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Joe. This is a really good report. In your report, you talked about maybe going out for an RFP. I was just wondering how many vendors are out there, and would that be a way to go so we get the best bang for our buck? And we'd also see in your report, it talks about through that process, there may be other new initiatives that can help traffic calming.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Warren. I lost my train of thought. So the question was?
On RFPs, how many vendors?
Oh, the RFP, yeah. There's multiple vendors.
Yeah, and vendors, and if you have so many vendors, they may have better ideas than somebody else, and we get better bang for our buck. That's all.
Great, thank you so much. Through you, Mr. Mayor. The vendors are offering the world, and we kind of need to vet them out of what they're actually offering. There's multiple. There's at least 3 to 5 vendors that are operating in Ontario that have the legal authority to give us vetted hardware. They claim that they could get us up and running with an AMP system in 6 months for undisclosed costs, maybe revenue sharing. I don't know if that's true, but that's what they've said. They just did it in East Gwillimbury. They just did it in Essex. So they tell us things like that. And other vendors are telling us they can be very flexible with what they're offering us. So the idea is we tell them what we're looking for, whether it's completely turnkey, what kind of involvement we want, how do we want to grow the system, how integrated it needs to be, and what kind of interdepartmental cooperation needs to happen. There's finance involved, IT involved. And so that way we could get a better idea of the costs.
So that's the RFP process you're talking about then?
Yes, it could either be expression of interest to get our feelers out or straight to the RFP if we know. I mean, we're not studying if we need it or not. That's up to you as a council, but this is information that we need to obtain to know how to go forward.
Absolutely. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Councillor Richardson.
Through you, just one quick question. Looking at these becoming permanent speed boards in communities, is there consideration to have local groups do some fundraising to be able to put these in their own communities? Because obviously we are going to have priority areas when it comes to school zones and whatnot based on that data. I'm just wondering if that option would be something for consideration.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor, through Councillor Richardson. That could be an option. The one thing we would like to avoid is having them dictate where the only 6 we have, where they go. But if they want to introduce funding to have their own in their own community, it would be Public Works would have to provide the necessary permits. They would have to maintain the sign. But in a general level, the municipality would not have a problem with them putting the sign in.
Deputy Mayor McDonald.
Yeah, thanks, through you. Just one more. We talked about the speed boards. Do we have data to support that? Does it work? Because we know the 50 kilometers to 40 kilometers doesn't work. That's obvious. Do we have data to say the speed boards work?
Thank you. Great question through Mr. Mayor to Deputy Mayor McDonald. They definitely work. There is debate on how long they work. The temporary ones probably show more reduction in speeds than a permanent one over time. People do get sign fatigue. When they get used to a sign, they ignore it, and they drive the way they think they deserve to be able to drive. But the traffic industry recognizes that they are effective in slowing speed down. They also collect data, so we usually start them in stealth mode without the numbers blinking. We collect the data, we turn it on, we see it drop 6, 7, 8 kilometers. So we do have the hard data that shows that it works. Thank you.
Thank you. We have a mover and seconder for the presentation. He usually puts his little hand. Councillor Yo, were you moving the recommendation? I think we already have a mover and seconder, or did you have a question?
I just gonna have one more question. I was gonna let it go, but you saw my hand there, so thank you. Through you, just a question. Being in the stealth mode, and it was interesting to me, and then turning them on and seeing the drop. Are those kind of statistics, was that what kind of drive where speed cameras would go, or would they go out in tandem? Would it be a step process?
Thank you for the question, through you, Mr. Mayor. So I believe you're referring to if it's the same methodology for the ASE radar cameras. So at what speed violation do we actually send out the citations? That's up to the municipality. It should be confidential, not published. You can choose that if someone's going 41, they get a ticket, or whatever speed we want. We can choose if there's a range of speeds that only get warnings. The warnings cost as much as the citation. No revenue comes back, but it is very effective to say, hey, your son was driving 50 in this school zone. Because it goes to the car's owner and they'll see the picture and they say, that's my son, something like that. So there's a lot of options like that. To summarize, we set the speed that we want to process citations for.
So we have a mover and seconder, all in favor? And that's passed. And can I get a mover and seconder for the report and for it to go to council? Councillor Perry, Councillor Joyce, all in favor? And that's passed. Next, we have item 6.3. Manager Liotti, did you want to speak to the mandatory connection bylaw review and to the report?
I will. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and good afternoon, all. The intent really is just to sort of walk you through the report in and of itself, delineate sort of the strategy that was used in deliberating and delivering the report, and next steps.
Just hang on a second. I'll see what we do about. Good job. Okay, So we're going to go right to the report, and Ms. Liotti will give us a walkthrough to the report. So we're not going to receive the presentation because there is no presentation. All right?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So again, the intent is just sort of an approach for the review. So firstly, I would like to thank Councillor Joyce and Councillor Smeaton for bringing this forward. It was a good opportunity in terms of our phase 1 review to consult with internal stakeholders. Who were those internal stakeholders? Public Works, Engineering Development Services, Legal and Information Services. And really the consultation was specifically two-pronged. It was with a goal to flush out the current interpretation of the Mandatory Connect bylaw and the key considerations that were used at the time, and then really to look at the impact of any of the amendments to the official plan and or secondary plans, specifically those that defined the urban settlement boundary areas of Lindsay, Omimi, Bobcaygeon, and Fenland Falls. And the question arose as to what action, if any, should be taken as a result of those amendments. So just a review in terms of current state, as the bylaw sits right now, we have 151 accounts that are levied a $50 mandatory connect fee for water and or sewer. They're billed quarterly, and it's really dependent on the services that are available within that community. What we've done is we've taken our first step at mapping these 151 accounts, working with our IT colleagues on a geographical information systems, and that allows us to see visually where these properties are located in terms of overlaying the urban settlement boundary areas. So clearly we can define easily which properties fell outside of those 4 specific areas. So in terms of the bylaw amendments, we've worked with our city solicitor. There are 2 recommended changes currently. The first is really the definition of the building, which is section 1.01 under definitions. We are just specifically adding the within an urban settlement boundary area as defined in the official plan for the city. And so really that just calls alignment to those changes and how we are going to define which properties will fall within the mandatory connect bylaw. The second definition, which is added in whole, is officially the plan is defined as means that it's a plan as in force and effect, as amended from time to time in the city pursuant to section 16 of the Ontario Planning Act, and again, as amended from time to time. What really this all means is this. What's really being proposed to council is that should we align with the amendments in the official plan? And so that does change how we would apply the bylaw as it currently sits. We currently have 151 properties, of which 63 would be removed. So they fall outside of those 4 boundary areas. The remainder would fall in. What's the revenue impact? $17,000 would be a revenue reduction. So we remove these 63 properties from the current interpretation. Again, should council adopt the bylaw effective January 1st, 2025, we would see that revenue reduction of $17,000 in 2025. But this is just phase 1. So the plan is in Q2 for phase 2. I would come back and report out, and we would sort of do a fulsome review of which properties fall within those 4 urban settlement boundary areas that we potentially have not included to date. As you all know, the city has been growing leaps and bounds. The inventory of mandatory connect properties has been relatively static. And so have we missed properties that we should capture in the next go around? Or we should be addressing the concern of, there are properties within those 4 delineated areas that potentially the services are not at the ready. So what is the strategic plan to bring those and eventually bring those into the fold for full servicing? The other part of phase 2 would be sort of in terms of recommendations for a specified timeline. So do we want to have a sunset clause? And what does that cost our resident? And should we have a, thank you, should we have a financial plan to support compliance in that regard? With regards to those financial assistance plans, there are other municipalities in the province of Ontario. There are lessons learned that we could bring forward in terms of best practices, and that would all be sort of delineated in phase 2 of the report. And I think that captures all the changes. I'm open to questions.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor McDonald.
Yeah, through you. Thank you, Linda. Just a good question. You talk about the urban areas, but I know that I have some that live in the city of Kawartha Lakes here, and they aren't hooked up. Is there a plan for them, or are we going to keep on charging them?
So yes, that is actually part of the phase 2. Is for those that have the services at the road, do we want to actually have a sunset clause to say you have 5 years to connect? And to start to shift them into more of the not fixed, but flat rate, so we're actually capturing additional revenue. Again, the conversation I've had conversations with other councillors here is the residents always come back and say, well, I don't actually have a benefit. The service is there, but I'm not the benefactor of that service current state. That may be true. However, costs of that infrastructure have been predicated based on X amount of users using that service. And so that's something that we have to look to. Again, we want to be mindful in terms of our approach and measured in our approach. And so consequently, that's why we've taken a little bit of a phased approach in this regard, saying, okay, this is step 1. Let's just look at urban settlement boundary areas if we choose to align with the amendments in the official plan. And then step 2 is how do we address those that have the services that aren't connected?
Do we have a number of how many that is in our city?
So through you, let me just take a quick peek here. So through you to the mayor, at present, we would have 63 being removed. Again, current state of what we know, 63 would be removed, and so consequently we would have, yep, it's right here, I just have to move my screen. We would have 88 that we would deal with within those urban settlement boundary areas, yeah. So 88 accounts in, 63 accounts out.
Councillor Joyce.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, through you, and thank you, Manager Liotti. And just for a bit of background, I was prepared to bring a memo to. I've been against this mandatory connect bylaw for some time, and I was bringing a memo to council back in May when Director Bupagum and Manager Liotti said, "Hold off, we have a reinterpretation coming." So here we are in October. And I've met with them, and I hope council supports this because it does make sense. I like common sense, and this one I think hits the mark where settlement areas, we still have a mandatory connect. Outside that, it's gone. And my interpretation of fairness is completely different than what's written here. And I did a lot of research, and one thing I'm reading here that the analogy is that people paying property taxes have access to libraries and roads. Well, they're not a utility. That's not a good analogy. My analogy is to other utilities such as hydro, gas. That line's going in front of their house. There's a benefit there, but they don't pay anything if they're not hooked up. Why is water any different? We had a resident that challenged it in the law, and the judge ruled against them. And I could read between the lines there. The judge, I think, was reluctantly saying, "Too bad, so sad. That's the law." But that's, some laws are in place that are not just. That's just my opinion. Anyhow, that's my commentary. My question is where we're at now, come January 1st, 2025, the properties, if this goes through, that are no longer under this bylaw, they will not be, like, are we still in time to, they don't receive a $50 bill in the first quarter? Where are we at with that?
So it would be done on a quarterly basis, hence why we're selecting January 1st. It's sort of the clean break. Effectively, as of January 1st, any accounts within that first quarter would not be billed for those 63 accounts coming out.
Thank you very much.
Councillor Warren.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Linda. Thank you for the report. Been through this for many years, and it was thought back in the day that because our water and wastewater was probably one of the most expensive in Ontario, that we needed to have that as many people sign on if they've got the service in front of their house. But this is good to look at this again, and they changed the urban settlement boundary again in Bobcaygeon, so people up the hill south, would love to have water and sewer, and they are now in the settlement boundary, and they will not be receiving that. So you will take that into account, as you said, just to be clear.
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor, yes, that's correct. So any of the mandatory connect of the 88 that remain within the mandatory connect would have actual services at the street that they could connect to. That will be the test to determine if they actually fall in. So it's not just because your property is within the urban settlement boundary area, because we don't have full services across all those respective areas.
Mm-hmm. And you did say, while you're giving an overview, that we would be maybe looking at that to expand water and sewer capability in the urban settlement boundary.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, yes, that is part of the second phase, is really to draw additional collaboration with our engineering colleagues so that we can plan accordingly, have a better understanding of when we are putting infrastructure in the ground and what accounts will be brought in as a result of that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. So I need a motion to move the report as printed. Councillor Joyce, Councillor Ashmore. All in favor? And that passes. Now move on to consent matters. All of the proposed recommendations shown in section 7.1 of the agenda be approved by the committee of the whole in order that they appear on the agenda, sequentially numbered and forwarded to council for consideration at the next regular council meeting, save and except 711. I have a mover and seconder. Deputy Mayor McDonald, Councillor Richardson, all in favor, and that's passed. 711, Councillor Warren, that's your extraction.
Yeah, I thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. I extracted it because it's quite, there are a lot of changes in this, and going forward, it's just to receive. We really don't have a lot we can do about it, but just a couple questions in the report. We have some really large MZOs that will change the urban settlement boundaries. Will they be included in our updated official plan? All these changes, I guess, will have to be put into our updated official plan. I guess that's my main question.
I assume you're directing it to Director Barry?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thanks for the question. Through you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, that's right, Councillor Warren. We have an obligation now under the new PPS at the time of our official plan review to include those lands that are subject to the MZOs to account for the requirements that they bring.
So that they're pretty big areas. So yeah, that'll be interesting. And also within the report, or actually in the PPS, there's some major changes on energy and conservation and agriculture, which is pretty interesting also. So I just suggest everybody have a really good look at this. It's quite interesting. So I'll move it. I just thought that somebody should extract this because there are quite a few changes in the PPS going forward. But I will move it. The recommendation.
Councillor
receive.
Richardson.
I'll second that, and I do want to give some accolades to Supervisor Joel because, we've had so many build changes in the last few years, and then this PPS really encapsulates it, and he really did put the interpretations pretty layman so we could have a better grasp of what was going on. So I do want to thank him for that.
Thank you. So we have a mover and seconder. All in favor? And that passes. Thank you. We have no new business. I will point out to you that probably a week from today will be your 2-year anniversary. So cast your mind back 2 years on where you were and how familiar you were with how the city worked. So, yeah, there you go. Can I have a motion to adjourn? Councillor Yeo, seconder. Deputy Mayor McDonald, all in favor? Thank you so much. Thank you for coming today. Thanks for everybody's participation.